This is the Wednesday, January 15th, 2020 afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, please call the roll. Oh, wait, we have a special circumstance. Pursuant to PCC 3.02.025, Commissioner Fritz is participating by telephone. Failure to allow participation of the City Council members by electronic communication would jeopardize the public interest, health and safety, and welfare. Does anyone have any objection?
No.
I don't have any objection. Very good. Keelan, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Hi, everybody. I'm very sorry I can't be there, but I'll be watching every second on television and listening on the phone. I'm here.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaley. Wheeler.
Here, and now we'll turn it over to the city attorney for the rules of order and decorum. And I just want to make note that today we have the agenda indicated very clearly we have 2 minutes of testimony.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist, and if you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals have 2 minutes to testify today. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good. Keelan, can you please read time certain item number 50, please?
Amend the comprehensive plan map, zoning map, and Title 33 planning and zoning to revise the single dwelling residential designations and base zones.
Very good. And as I've been advised by legal counsel before we begin the residential infill project work session, I want to announce that I own property in a residential zone. Properties in all residential zones could be impacted by the residential infill project. I have no plans and no intent to redevelop or change the use of my property. However, out of an abundance of caution, I'm disclosing this as a potential conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mayor. As a renter within the residential infill project area, I also want to declare a potential conflict of interest. I don't own the building, so I don't anticipate doing any renovations or changes to the building. And so just wanted to, for the sake of full disclosure, have that on the record. Thank you.
Mayor,
Commissioner Fritz.
I live in the affected area. I own some properties in the affected area. I'm no more or less impacted on most of the items, and I'll let folks know when I'm more impacted. I have a potential conflict of interest and want to put that on the record.
Very good. Commissioner Daly.
I don't believe I have a conflict of interest to declare. I'm a renter and I live in a building on the National Historic Registry, so I don't.
Maybe.
Good. Done. As our community continues to grow, colleagues, we're facing important questions about housing availability and affordability. And increasingly, people, especially those who earn less than the median income, cannot afford to live in the city of Portland. These are more than questions about housing policy or market dynamics. They're questions about what kind of city we want to be. This council has said time and time again that we want Portland to be affordable for people from all walks of life, in families of every size, at every income level. We believe that safe, secure, and affordable housing is a right. And together we've taken action. We passed the FAIR ordinance to help ensure renters have access to housing in this city. We passed the relocation assistance to support renters when their housing is made unstable. We're funding almost 1,500 new affordable homes through the housing bond. We've adopted creative code changes like the Better Housing by Design to allow more multifamily developments outside of the central city. And we've worked with our partners at the state to pass legislation expanding renter protections and increasing funding for both housing and services. Additionally, the state adopted House Bill 2001 and Senate Bill 534, requiring cities to develop strategies to meet our Goal 10 housing requirements, more housing. Our city and our state have a rich history of smart growth policies that have created an Oregon way of life. Instead of massive freeways and subdivisions that lead to endless sprawl, a bigger carbon footprint and longer commute times, we've protected the world's richest soils and stunning natural areas through policies like our urban growth boundary. Today, we zoom in on a critical local strategy in the spirit of an Oregon way of life. The residential infill project increases and diversifies housing opportunity within and throughout the entire city. It reduces the overall risk of displacement for over 200 households currently experiencing housing instability each and every day. It also creates opportunities for less expensive housing and right-sized homes. Last month, we held a work session focused on Portland's history of racist land use decisions and the recommended draft to prepare us for these public hearings today and tomorrow. After 4 years, multiple iterations of the proposal, thousands of comments, and countless hours dedicated to research, analysis, drafting, and updating the proposal, I'm very excited that the residential infill project is finally before the Portland City Council. Before I turn it over to the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Director, Andrea Durbin, and Project Manager, Morgan Tracy, I want to explain the hearing process over the next 2 days. We're holding 2 hearings this afternoon and tomorrow evening. We have separate sign-up sheets for each hearing. If you're on today's list but don't have the opportunity to speak because of time constraints, I invite you to return tomorrow and sign up again, and we'll do our best to give you time to speak. Although I will say that based on the number of people who've signed up so far, I believe everybody who wants to speak today will have that opportunity. Given the community interest in this proposal, we're limiting testimony to 2 minutes. We want to hear from as many people as possible, and we'll do our best to get through the entire list today. From there, the timeline is up to us, and I believe it should be flexible. I'm supportive of this effort so that Portland can grow in an equitable and sustainable and thoughtful manner. I want to acknowledge the urgency, in part because of state law, and in part because of the many Portlanders who point out how many people are being displaced, how expensive it is to currently live in the city of Portland, and how we have to address climate change with every single tool that we have at our disposal. At the same time, I recognize that we may need to strengthen the proposal. We need to get it right, and that's where testimony comes in. I will continue to support this policy, and I commit to continued collaboration with my colleagues to ensure that when this policy becomes before us for action, it's going to be the best that it can possibly be. Director Durbin, please take it away. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Durbin, Director of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and City Commissioners for your engagement in this process. After 4 years of development and deliberations, we are excited to be here at City Council to kick off the public testimony for residential infill. We recognize that there are strong feelings about these proposed zoning changes, strong support and a desire to see the city go further, and we have heard genuine concerns about the potential impact on neighborhoods. As we continue the public conversation at City Council today, I want to acknowledge that we all want to see Portland be a place where everyone is welcome, and we want a city where all residents can thrive for decades to come. Our city is growing, and we are faced with new challenges, from the lack of housing options and housing affordability to traffic congestions and longer commute times. Our city is changing today and will continue to change. The question we face is how we prepare for these changes and expected growth while ensuring we are serving residents at all income levels and providing equitable access to new opportunities. Residential infill zoning changes are just one of the city's strategies to plan for long-term housing needs. As we welcome more people into our community, we must ensure our neighborhoods are inclusive, and we must provide more housing choices for current and future residents. We believe the residential infill project helps deliver these opportunities. I'd like to thank everyone today who will come and testify on residential infill and tomorrow, those that have provided written testimony, and all of those people who have served on advisory committees and provided us with the input these past 4 years. Learning from these broader perspectives and experiences helps us improve our policy recommendations, and the proposed draft before you is better because of that collective input. As we start the public testimony process, I hope we can all be open to the belief that everyone who is engaged with this process is doing so because they want Portland to continue to be a great place to live. The goal for the next 2 days is to hear public input, not to review potential amendments. We will come back to City Council on January 29th for a summation and review of the First Amendment package. After the public testimony, we look forward to hearing from commissioners' offices on the additional amendment proposals that you would like to consider and introduce for consideration in February. Before we open up the public testimony, I will turn to my colleague who's a lead on residential infill, Morgan Tracy, and he's going to give us a summary, high-level review of RIP. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, or good morning, depending. I'm Morgan Tracy with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, Project Manager for the Residential Infill Project. Before I begin, I'd like to note that the project record is in the room, and I would like to add these background materials to that record. I have a short overview of the key proposals in the residential infill project. These are summarized in the 8-page summary that folks were able to grab on their way into the room. And for those viewing at home, this summary is also available on our project website, which is noted on the slide above. For the sake of time, rather than cover each of these 12 proposals, I'm going to quickly highlight several that have garnered the most attention and conversation. So these first proposals relate to increasing housing options and choices. Proposal 1 includes expanding the types of housing allowed in single-dwelling zones from just a house and a single ADU to a house plus 2 ADUs, a duplex or a duplex plus 1 ADU, a triplex, or a fourplex. The Planning Commission recommended that these housing options be available more broadly throughout the single-dwelling zones, except in the following circumstances: smaller lot sizes, where it can be more difficult to accommodate the additional units and meet the development standards; natural resource areas; natural hazard areas like floodplains and landslide risks; as well as sites that lack paved street frontages. The second proposal establishes a new limit on building size that is proportionate to the size of the lot through what we call floor areas, or FARs. On a typical 5,000 square foot lot, rather than the 6,750 square foot building pictured on the right that is allowed today, the proposal establishes a maximum size limit for a house of 2,500 square feet, pictured in green. To encourage the creation of additional units, the size of the structure can increase with the second or third units as shown here. For example, a house with an ADU or duplex could be 3,000 square feet, whereas a triplex or fourplex could be 3,500 square feet. Bonus FAR, or additional square footage, is offered to incentivize converting existing houses, or one of the units within the structure is a regulated affordable unit at 80% MFI. To address the growing population of aging adults, as well as increase access to housing for folks with mobility impairments, when building 3 or more units, one of those units will be required to be visitable. And this means a no-step entry, wider doorways throughout the house, plus a bathroom and living area on the ground floor. Proposal number 5 includes rezoning about half of the historically narrow lots from R5 to R2.5 that are located close to designated centers, corridors, or existing R2.5 zoning. And these are shown in purple on this map. These next few proposals affect building and site design rules. Proposal number 8 changes how building height is measured to more effectively regulate height limits and better address dormers to ensure they function as secondary roof forms as opposed to full floor extensions. To provide greater flexibility for internal ADU creation and further facilitate garage conversions, the requirement that the ADU door not be on the same facade as the front door of the house will no longer apply. Also, to encourage more basement ADU creation, as well as further incentivize retention of existing houses, the current 800 square foot size limit will not apply to basement ADUs in existing houses. Several changes are also proposed for parking. First, minimum parking mandates are removed for residential uses in the single dwelling zones. Second, for those lots located on alleys, any new parking will have to be accessed from that alley. Third, on lots without alley access, parking will be restricted in front of the dwelling, but parking in a driveway serving a garage or parking located at the side or rear of the dwelling will still be allowed. And fourth, a limitation on the amount of street-facing garage ensures that the first floor better relates to the public realm and is not dominated by garage doors. This final proposal includes a couple measures to address development on narrow lots. The height limit will be 1.5 times the width of the building. For example, a 22.5-foot height limit on a 15-foot wide house. And for lots that are 25 feet wide or less, new houses will be required to be attached to provide for improved compatibility, better energy efficiency, and larger backyards instead of unusable side yards. And that concludes my presentation. So unless there are questions, I'll turn it back to the mayor to commence public testimony.
Any questions? Commissioner Hardesty. Very good. Commissioner Fritz, are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, very good. So now we're going to open the floor to public testimony on the residential infill project recommended draft. I want to acknowledge that there's many city advisory bodies that have worked on the residential infill project. And I want to invite anyone, if you are here representing one of the city advisory bodies, could you come up at this time to give your presentation? Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Name for the record, 2 minutes.
Mayor Wheeler. Before I start, I do wish to extend my sympathy to you all for the loss of your colleague, Nick Fish.
Thank you.
I'm the chair of the Landmarks Commission, Kristen Miner. All single-family neighborhoods across Portland, whether historic or not, should be able to add density. The residential infill project will allow for this to happen, which is a huge step forward. We do seek form-based size limitations rather than unit-based. By doing this, we can actually get more density in neighborhoods with existing larger structures. We need to protect vulnerable neighborhoods of post-war cottages or smaller houses. We urge caution in setting a one-size-fits-all unit count measurement, which will allow structures at about 3 times the size of an average house. Once again, the smallest and most affordable housing stock we have is the most vulnerable. This is an equity issue. We can find a better way, one that will lessen displacement by literally keeping folks in their home and developing more middle housing behind, within, below houses, and in garages. We ask for your help in setting a modest demolition penalty and for creating more incentives for developers to move toward adaptive reuse and additions and away from business as usual demolish and rebuild. Like everything on this planet, we need to better use what we already have. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Maya Foti. I'm the vice chair of the Historic Landmark Commission.
You can move that closer if it's more comfortable.
We wrote our points into a letter that I handed over, and I think also we emailed to you. I was going to touch on some of the points that we had in our letter regarding sustainability and affordability. So volume 1 of RIP makes the case that some houses may be retained, but many will be replaced. The PHLC does agree, but we need both carrots and sticks to push developers as well as homeowners to take on more alterations and additions to existing houses. Not every house should be saved, but many that get demolished could have been refurbished, added onto, or moved to other sites. We should reward rehabilitation and adaptive reuse. And I'm going to read to you some points, a 10-point letter that the AIA issued about reducing embodied carbon. And about 40% of the energy consumed, I'm sure you've heard some of these statistics, I'm just reiterating it. About 40% of the energy consumed in the US in 2015 went directly or indirectly to operating buildings. When you add embodied carbon, the energy and emissions from materials and construction, that number is almost 50%. The two key points that the AIA issued was, number one, reuse buildings instead of constructing new ones. Renovation and reuse projects typically save between 50 and 75% of the embodied carbon emissions compared to constructing a new building. This is especially true if the foundations and structure are preserved, since most embodied carbon resides there. It's hard for architects and builders to give up doing new. It's why they got into the business. I have more time. Reuse material whenever possible. Look to salvage materials like brick, metals, broken concrete, or wood. They typically have lower embodied carbon footprint than new materials. And then finally, the impacts discussion also claims that RIP will reduce the cost of housing. It is unclear how that would happen. New construction is almost always more expensive than purchasing or rehabilitating and adding to existing housing. And new constructions will likely not last as long as structures built in the 1940s and earlier. With that, thank you. And it's all in the letter, so
Thank you.
for your time.
Appreciate it very much, and thanks for your volunteer efforts and all the work that you put into this. Thank you. Does that complete folks from our city commissions? Good. Then we'll move into testimony. It is tradition here that when we have lots of people signed up, that we call up people who have medical, work, or family obligations and need to testify immediately. Is there anybody who meets those criteria? If you do, come see Keelan. Otherwise, thank you. Testifiers will be called in the order in which you signed up. Each person will have 2 minutes to testify. We will, of course, continue to accept written testimony. Email form is always appreciated until this Friday, January 17th at 5 p.m. Keelan, please call up the first three.
Terry Parker, Marianne Schwab, Arlene Williams.
The microphones slide around in about 6 inches. Turns out to work the best. And go ahead and just leave the microphones on when you're done testifying. Would you like to go ahead and start, please?
I think he was ahead of me.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I just go in the
okay.
same order so I don't forget.
All
Thank
right,
you.
okay. My name is Arlene Williams. I live at 5401 Southeast Henry Street. I'm here to ask you to exclude my dead-end block from the infill overlay. I have a petition by people on my street that supports an amendment. Plenty of lots on the west side are excluded. There is magenta all over that map. Yes, landslides are a hazard, but so are dead-end streets. People can get trapped by fire, gas explosion, toxic spill, or police incident. The International Fire Code, the Oregon State Code, the Mongomery County Code, and even Portland Code has provisions for fire apparatus turnarounds on dead-end streets. My street does not have a turnaround. It ends in a 7-foot fence I cannot climb. In 2016, the City Council did not upzone my block to higher density in the comprehensive plan. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for recognizing the safety issues. This time, whatever section of the city public safety codes I cite seems to be discounted by planning as only applying to new development. I ask, aren't we talking about new development in this infill project? I have also been told that new infill construction will have interior sprinklers, so all is good. But don't people in older homes without sprinklers count? Shouldn't our safety matter? Here's the question for you as politicians to decide. Is it safe? We have a very dense street with 2 fourplexes, 2 triplexes, 4 duplexes, 2 ADUs, 3 flag lots, and 8 single-family homes on one short block. Putting more people on my block will make it harder to rescue everyone safely. Do you really want to increase the risk of someone not getting out alive? We have plenty of infill housing. It is enough. Dead-end streets are dangerous. It's up to you. Do we matter?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mary Ann Schwab. I live in the Sunnyside neighborhood. I am a community advocate. Here are the reasons why I agree 100% with United Neighborhoods for Reform, the UNR, vetted opposition to the RIP proposed plans to revise the single-dwelling residential designations and base zones by amending the Comprehensive Plan 2035, the Comprehensive Plans map, and the zoning map and Title 33. And the reasons why I was disappointed when BBS recommended RIP, which allows fourplexes nearly anywhere in the city, which goes a long way beyond the state bill requires. RIP ADUs will never be affordable to those of us living on fixed incomes. The MFI 30% is so low on the RIP scale, it is not referenced. Yet condos under construction are affordable to those households earning, and it's very confusing with these figures. I've got 60% equals 70% for a family of 4. The rentals, regardless of your MFI, are based on 30% of the household's gross income. Not surprising, the Portland workforce has been moving out of the inner city neighborhoods. Moving is especially difficult when their primary school-age children enter a new school, new teachers, new friends. Yes, especially difficult when middle and high school students are moving midterm. Without a doubt, RIP may not be aware of these unintended consequences. It is time those Portland prosper potential foreign and domestic investors start paying attention to the city, county, and Multnomah work towards lowering the rents to meet those living on fixed incomes. Did I fail to mention last year the state of Oregon legislature approved HB 2001, HB 2003? And should city council vote to approve RIP, I can't imagine what become of my 1908 bungalow constructed on an A25 lot is deconstructed and replaced with a fourplex. The Sunnyside apartments have 106 units with 40 on-site parking places, yet 6 vehicles are parked at my corner, often blocking my driveway. Mayor and commissioners, please think twice prior to rubber stamping RIP solely based on the urgent needs of those flipping investors here today and gone tomorrow. Again, I agree with UNA. The most affordable and greenest house is the one already standing. That said, I plan to live in mine until they carry me out in a box. That's my gentrification. We should not be forced out of our houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Good afternoon, Terry.
Yeah, my name's Terry Parker, Northeast Portland. To start with, BPS has been distributing misinformation. The enrolled version of HB 2001 requires cities to allow triplexes and quadplexes in areas, not on each lot. To immediately allow triplexes and quadplexes on every lot is reckless. Developers are interested in maximizing profits, not solving the city's affordable housing problems. Moreover, the larger structures are more likely to reduce setbacks, impair sightlines, eliminate green yards, and remove mature trees that store carbon. Allowing this type of density should be an experiment that is limited to only the neighborhoods that want it. Citywide, triplexes and quadplexes should only be allowed as middle step-down housing along high-volume corridors and in town centers. As presented, RIP also wrongly ignores the December 2016 City Council amendment that allows front-loading garages on narrow lots. On-street parking deficiencies already exist in some neighborhoods. A full build-out of RIP would do the same. In my block, on a working-class neighborhood street, the average number of cars per household is 2.5. Households of color have the most vehicles. If the city expects people to transition to electric vehicles, adequate off-street parking with overnight charging capabilities needs to be required. Narrow residential streets full of stored cars can easily give rise to mobilely impaired access and safety issues for everything from emergency vehicles to garbage service to bicycling. The rezoning of properties that recognize narrow historic lots between 57th and 60th south of Rose City Park School needs to be removed from RIP. They are not in close proximity to a full range of services. The rezoning promotes the demolition of beautiful working-class houses, and some of the properties targeted do not even have underlying lot lines. In closing, RIP encourages the demolition of starter homes. Portland already has a short supply. New construction will always cost more. Likewise, replacing single-family homes with multiple family housing will increase the cost of all single-family homes. By passing this contentious process presented, RIP City will become a more costly, torn apart city.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, all three of you.
Thank you. I'll call the next 3 and then the 3 after that so we can have.
Sure, you bet.
The next 3, Nikki Thompson, Haley Dallas, Taylor Smiley Wolf. Following that group will be Maxwell Pratt, Sean Carpenter, and Nicole Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Thompson, and I'm an attorney here in Portland. And one of my practice areas is representing low-income tenants in eviction court in Multnomah County. Given the competitive Portland market and lack of affordable housing, many tenants have difficulty keeping up with high rents. Every month, this puts a strain on low-income renters as a significant portion of their income is put toward housing. Given this reality, the vast majority of my cases in eviction court are for non-payment of rent. In this kind of case, the tenant is typically served a 72-hour notice for failing to pay rent in a given month. Then the process moves rapidly. Once the landlord files a complaint and the tenant goes to court, often the landlord or the landlord's attorney is willing to work with the tenant, setting up an agreement for a payment plan so the tenant can make up the back rent. Unfortunately, the circumstances that led to the tenant falling behind on their rent often haven't changed. They frequently enter into the agreement to avoid being evicted, but without the ability to pay the back rent or even their future rent. Once the tenant defaults on the agreement with the landlord, the tenant will then have an eviction on their record. After working with numerous tenants, I can say evictions are an emotionally devastating and traumatic event. They also create a nearly impossible barrier to find housing, which can lead to homelessness. So how does this relate to the discussion around the residential infill project? Housing solutions are a continuum. By creating more available, diverse, and affordable housing for middle-income families and individuals, it will shift the market to free up more available housing for renters like my clients. This will take the pressure off, placing my clients at less risk of eviction and the harm that comes with it. It's crucial we do whatever we can to help our fellow Portlanders avoid facing evictions. And I believe that adding housing options in residential neighborhoods will lessen the evictions of low-income tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello, my name is Haley Dallas, and I live on Northeast 34th Avenue. I'm a member of the Sunrise Movement, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon, in support of the residential infill project with the edits proposed by Portland Neighbors Welcome. My mother bought her first home when she was 26 years old. She saved up for a down payment on a single-family home in a residential neighborhood. I'm 24 now, and the idea of homeownership seems laughably impossible. If we do not commit to dense, affordable housing infrastructure immediately, home prices will continue to skyrocket, and I'm unsure if I will ever be in the financial position to own a home in this city. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Portland's homelessness issue is one of the worst in the nation, and every day I see people without homes suffering in my neighborhood. And I also listen to the fears of my friends and colleagues who are one paycheck away from homelessness themselves. Affordable housing is a human right and a life or a death issue for many of our community members. This is solved with affordable homes. I'm also lucky that I come from generations of homeownership, and I recognize that this is largely due to my whiteness. Prioritizing anti-displacement initiatives for communities of color is essential in reckoning with our history of racist housing policies and a necessity in beginning to build equity for these historically marginalized populations. Finally, I'm worried about my future. Investing in single-family, carbon-intensive infrastructure moves us further away from our emissions goals and closer to an inhospitable climate. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I will be in my early 30s by the time our climate fate is sealed. Refusing to aggressively pursue sustainable infrastructure quite literally robs me of a future. Overall, I support this measure, but only with the amendments from Portland Neighbors Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and members of the Portland City Council. For the record, my name is Taylor Smiley Wolf, the Policy Director for Home Forward, and I'm here today in strong support of the residential infill project. I'm sure that you will hear from many community members in opposition to this proposal who will testify that if it only allowed homes that were 100% affordable, they would support it. As a representative of the largest affordable housing provider in the state, I want to push back on that argument. We need subsidized middle housing, but the key to creating subsidized homes is not banning middle-priced homes. It is subsidy. Home Forward's data shows that market rate middle housing lets our subsidies go further, enabling us to serve more families earning low incomes in Multnomah County. In 2019, 16% of all Home Forward voucher holders lived in a duplex, triplex, or quad. That is over 1,100 families and 3,610 people. We analyzed the average rents of homes that voucher holders were living in by housing type, and we found that average rents were significantly lower for duplexes, triplexes, and quads compared to single-family homes. While voucher holders pay a percentage of their income towards rent, this is important because it allows us to pay less per household served so we can serve more households earning low incomes. For example, the average rent of a duplex, triplex, or quad was 22% less than a single-family home in 2019. We estimate that the difference between using those 1,100 vouchers in a duplex, triplex, or quad instead of a single-family home is a cost savings equivalent to serving an additional 585 households per year. Finally, we support the proposal because people earning low incomes in Portland who don't have access to affordable housing are at risk of displacement, and the proposal is expected to reduce overall displacement by 28%. We understand that the displacement risk analysis identified a few areas where displacement risk would increase, and we support the formation of a displacement task force to mitigate that risk in meaningful partnership with community-based and culturally specific organizations. So thank you very much for the opportunity to testify in support of the residential infill project today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, all three of you.
The next three are Maxwell Pratt, Sean Carpenter, Nicole Johnson. They will be followed by Diane Lynn, Tim Pitts, and Stephen Judkins.
Good afternoon. Would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Maxwell Pratt. I'm a real estate broker with Think Real Estate, and I want to thank the commissioners and the mayor for the opportunity to make a simple request. Help me sell more homes to millennials. Many people are advocating for affordable housing for low-income people, and I support that fight. But I find myself on the front lines of the homeownership theater, and for many people in my generation, it really is a battlefield out there. The residential infill project will help a more diverse group of Portlanders afford the dream of home ownership by increasing our housing supply. If we don't make the most of this policy, I'm afraid that the housing crisis will consume more and more of our neighbors over the coming decades. I want to help you understand the people who will benefit from more housing options in Portland. Currently, starter homes here cost around $350,000. Many people with good jobs, tradespeople, teachers, nurses, and administrative staff, are unable to purchase their first home without a down payment gift from their families. People who don't have access to this gift, well, they're out of luck. Do something as a community that we can be proud of by building homes for a new generation.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor Wheeler. My name is Sean Carpenter, and I'll be giving testimony on behalf of 1,000 Friends of Oregon and our Portland for Everyone program. For many, Portland is a sanctuary, a safe harbor. The zeitgeist of Portland is one that welcomes climate and war refugees, people in search of a better life, bright-eyed youth, and even those like me who fled my hometown because, frankly, I was afraid I was going to become another hate crime statistic. Portland is now my home, and I'm not afraid anymore. But unfortunately, decades of poor housing policy means that we can't provide for the current residents of Portland, much less the expected 100,000 new households by 2035. Today, however, we have a chance to begin course correcting with RIP, something I know the average Portlander would be in favor of because my experience here is one of compassion, kindness, and love for our neighbor. The facts are that there is empirical evidence to show that RIP will reduce displacement overall in Portland, help mitigate climate change through reduced carbon emissions and improve transit investments, and create more housing options. And there is no empirical evidence to show that RIP will markedly increase demolitions, something that's already happening now anyways, destroy neighborhood character, which is often defined by pre-war multiplexes, or result in only expensive luxury units. I urge you to vote yes on RIP, because right now there are real people suffering, living paycheck to paycheck as rents rise and their options dwindle. The same people that can't be here to testify today because they're working multiple jobs or taking care of children. Our housing crisis is so bad that one policy could never solve every issue we face. It's a straw man to argue that RIP shouldn't be passed because it's not a panacea. That's not how public policy works. Hopefully, we'll pass RIP and then work on permanently affordable housing options for people making 80, 70, 60, 40% or even below AMI, and create additional solutions to end displacement permanently in Portland. I know you all want to help, and I know this is a difficult decision, especially because of the sordid history surrounding housing, but we truly believe this is the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Council. My name is Nicole Johnson, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at 1,000 Friends of Oregon. I am appreciative that my part of work is to support and participate in the anti-displacement PDX Coalition. On behalf of the coalition, we support the residential infill project's goal of diversifying and expanding the number of homes in Portland's often exclusive single-dwelling zones. We think that this is a strong proposal, and for this code change to be truly equitable, rather than simply adding housing supply, it must include measures that support the production of regulated, affordable homes and provide stability for renters. My family moved to Oregon in 1997 and landed in a neighborhood or an apartment in the heart of Northeast Portland. Because of displacement pressures that caused several moves, including 3 elementary school changes, we rented a house, and although it was near Franklin High School, it was far away from our cultural ties and amenities. Despite developing roots, social networks, and ties, after 10 years, we were moving again, this time to the only affordable place, an apartment on the border of Portland and Gresham. My story of rent displacement is not unique. RIP is important because it gives housing options to root where it's affordable, close to amenities, without the burden of rent displacement and racist exclusionary practices. We call on City Council to pass RIP and to support the stability of our communities and the creation of new opportunities for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income Portlanders to live in neighborhoods of their choice, including the choice to return to neighborhoods from which they've been displaced. In order for a residential infill project to provide equitable housing opportunities, and in order to comply with comprehensive plans, affordable housing, and anti-displacement commitments, Anti-Displacement PDX calls on City Council to adopt a package of amendments which are detailed in the document that I'll be sharing with you very soon. These amendments will achieve 3 goals: to provide robust incentives for developers to build regulated affordable units in Portland's single-dwelling zones, to create a dedicated source of subsidy for affordable infill housing, and to provide greater stability for renters in single-dwelling zones and beyond. The Anti-Displacement Coalition looks forward to meeting with each of you in your offices in the coming weeks to discuss these in more details. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, all 3 of you.
The next 3 are Diane Lynn, Tim Pitts, Stephen Judkins. They will be followed by Sean Green, Esme D. Miller, Joyce DeMonin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name's Diane Lynn. I'm Executive Director of Proud Ground. We're dedicated to creating permanently affordable homeownership opportunities for working families using the Community Land Trust model. We're here to support residential infill, and we think that what you could do here today is help us create more home ownership opportunities for families that we're working so hard to serve, and especially those people of color. I'll be submitting a much more detailed testimony. The highlights today are that we all know you know the crisis. You're going to hear about it a lot from people who are here to testify. As a proud native Portlander, former county commissioner and county chair, and former director of the Office of Neighborhood Associations, I've watched the city grow and change over many years, and I think we're at a precipice that gives us a chance to make neighborhoods around this community more economically and culturally diverse. Proud Ground has about 545 families on our wait list. 71% of them are people of color. The average AMI is about 50% at $38,000 a year. We know that homeownership provides stability for families and anchors children and community. Proud Ground's permanently affordable feature allows the community to sustain those assets over time and prevents displacement in the future. We're here to support Portland Neighbors Welcome and Anti-Displacement PDX's positions that emphasize the components that will allow us and our nonprofit partners to build more affordable units in Portland neighborhoods for those people that don't have that family gift of a down payment. We think that we have an opportunity to work with all of you and our partners to consider a 6 or 8-plex amendment that might provide us an opportunity to go even deeper into the affordability area that I think you're going to hear so much about, which is so very important. So 6 and 8 units, I know, is a question, but I think we're here to work with you to create a good amendment package to consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Tim Pitts. I've lived in Portland for 18 years, and I'm the owner of Think Real Estate, which is a real estate brokerage in Northeast. I'm here to voice my support for the residential infill project. I live on Northeast 8th Avenue on the edge of the Irvington neighborhood. My husband and I own a 4-bedroom house on a 5,000 square foot lot, and most of the neighboring households have 1 or 2 people in them. This is why housing is so expensive in Portland and why traffic is getting so bad. Single-family zoning is forcing Portland to sprawl outward. We need to put more people in the close-in neighborhoods that can accommodate them, and RIP is a big step in that direction. My work involves working with many people trying to buy a home in Portland, and I can tell you we're absolutely still in a housing emergency. We need more housing, and RIP is a smart way to add this density. It has incentives that, in my opinion, will discourage demolishing an existing home by limiting the size of future homes as compared to current city code, which seems to encourage the demolition of single homes to be replaced by a single huge home or two huge homes. This doesn't do anything to help affordability or to help our community. RIP would address that. We do need more affordable housing and more ways for tenants to become homeowners. I strongly support incentives that would allow more density for affordable housing, and I also think we need stronger anti-displacement measures and stronger tenant protections, and if this policy is the best place to incorporate that, then I fully support it. Commissioner Hardesty, when we first met, you said something that really scared me, which was that you saw Portland turning into a playground for the rich. It scared me because I thought you were totally right and that that's the same course that we're on. And I think it's sad and scary to live in a city that is so rich and to see that some people have so little. So with this vote, and I would urge you with every vote that you take, don't worry about the homeowners who are going to be okay no matter what happens, but worry about the people who barely have housing or don't have housing at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Stephen Jenkins. I grew up in Portland, was lucky enough to spend my childhood here, and buy a home in North Portland in 2012. Recently, I had 2 young sons, which are the happiest things ever happened to me, but I read something, a story from the Bay Area in California that really broke my heart. It's about parents telling their kids they have to move to other states because they can't afford to live in the same neighborhoods they grew up in. And I realize now how blessed I am to be able to go and live where I grew up. Since I bought my house in 2012, the assessed value has probably tripled according to real estate. I'm doing okay as a homeowner. I'm doing great already. No one should listen to the problems I have. We should listen to the problems that my kids are going to have in 20 years. We should make sure that everyone in the city, everyone from outside the city, every race, background, rich, poor, has an opportunity to live here in the future. Given that, I do strongly support most of the parts of residential infill project. I think what I've learned recently from the problems facing like very poor people that I probably never faced, we need to make sure that add additional incentives for affordable housing, perhaps like 6 to 8 units on a lot if some number are affordable. We have to make sure that existing supply for new middle-class people is preserved. So I want to thank everyone that's done the good work so far. I know that residential infill project alone won't be the solution to all the problems. I don't think Portland can solve all the problems by itself, but I think it'll be a very good step forward. It's very important that we build enough housing for the next generation of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before you leave,
Please, Commissioner Hardesty.
I'm curious, there will be a lot of people talking about affordable housing, but that term means different things to different people. Do you have an income level that you are referring to? And I would encourage anybody else who uses that term to actually put a number to it, because what's affordable for me may not be affordable for you. So did you have a number in mind?
So I think if you look at California, there are middle-class people who are rent-burdened and very poor people who are rent-burdened. But I think subsidized affordable housing, it seems like 60% MFI and lower is something that's really important. People are really hurting in Portland right now.
Thank you for that. I'm very happy to know that you know MFI and you're actually thinking about like what the range is, because you're absolutely right. People talk affordable, but what we do isn't necessarily affordable for the people that you are talking about. So I thank you very much. Appreciate all of it.
Thank you.
The next 3 are Sean Green, Esme D. Miller, Joyce DeMonin, followed by Tony Jordan, Julia Metz, and Sarah Wright.
Would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and members of council. My name is Sean Green.
I'm Vice Chair of the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods and Co-Chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. My involvement in what became residential infill began when I was Chair of the Laurelhurst Neighborhood Association and on the Southeast Uplift Land Use and Transportation Committee. The project was spurred in large part by folks who were concerned about the number of demolitions and the scale of new construction in neighborhoods, and by folks concerned about the lack of diverse housing options that contribute to affordable housing goals. I was at the meeting in the fall of 2015 when Mayor Hales sought a grand bargain to address these two concerns. I have since moved my neighborhood advocacy work from Southeast Uplift to the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods. 5 years later, I still support this work and feel that the spirit of the proposal lives up to the original vision. The Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods supports the recommended draft in order to help fulfill the vision of the comprehensive plan by increasing the amount of affordable housing. We hope you consider the two following amendments to the recommended draft. Allow sixplexes in projects where at least 3 of the units are affordable to residents earning 60% MFI. Protect existing affordable housing through a concurrent implementation of the Anti-Displacement Action Plan. When I hear concerns from some residents who are worried about changes to their neighborhoods. I think if we are honest about the history of development in Portland, this proposal is not likely to drastically change our neighborhoods. In 1991, Portland legalized duplexes on all residential corner lots. Nearly 30 years later, less than 5% of corner lots have been developed into duplexes. The board of the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods urges you to allow for more diverse and affordable housing options in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Dear Commissioners, my name is Esme Damaris Miller. I came to speak today in support of the residential infill project and the proposed deeper affordability option out of my personal experience as someone who stayed too long in a shared family household that ultimately proved to be an unhealthy environment for my child. I stayed because I feared being thrown on the mercy of the Portland rental market, and the choice I made when I left was to trade familial stress for financial stress. My experience reflects a larger reality, the city's ongoing housing crisis and our failure to respond to it with bold and transformative action makes it hard for victims of intimate partner abuse, elder abuse, or anyone living in an unsafe or unhealthy household to strike out on their own. When we left, it was the ability of a small square footage, no parking apartment in the Woodstock multifamily zone that allowed us to stay in the neighborhood at all. Imagine then how much easier it would have been to make the right choice for my daughter had all of the surrounding neighborhoods been full of such units. But our ability to stay in the neighborhood also has other implications. My family gets around the city almost exclusively on transit and bike. If we are ultimately displaced to Clackamas or Tigard, we will also be thrown into greater auto dependency. Acceding to the ongoing displacement of poor, working class, and even middle-income Portlanders will make it that much harder to achieve the dramatic reductions in carbon emissions that will be required to fend off the worst scenarios for climate change. And in 15 or 20 years, I would like to live in a world that my daughter might consider bringing children into. In the name of the grandchildren I hope to someday help raise, I ask you to do the right thing and allow the city to build the kind of housing that will allow more of us to establish safe and healthy households and to live less carbon-intensive lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. Good afternoon, Joyce.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I'm Joyce DeBonin with AARP Oregon. I'm the Communication Director and was born right here in Portland, went to Grant High School. Live in Portland now. We are pleased to join the chorus of supporters for the residential infill project. As you know, AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social change organization with 90,000 members in the city. People of all ages desire walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods with varied types of homes and access to amenities and transportation options. However, many of our neighborhoods fail to meet the needs that align with our changing demographics and economic realities. According to the census, we expect 21% of Oregon's population to be 65 and older by 2030. A high percentage of older Oregonians, both renters and homeowners, are housing cost burdened, and this burden increases with age. Today, an older adult looking to downsize faces a tough challenge to find affordable homes in his/her neighborhood or as a renter or a homeowner. It's time to update city codes to enable expanding housing options that match the needs of citizens today. Smaller homes are in demand across Portland, and the residential infill project will allow Portland to meet this need and at the same time add visitability requirements and affordability incentives. On behalf of our members, we want to thank the city for all its thoughtful planning, and we urge you to support the residential infill project. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to making our region age-friendly and livable for people of all ages.
And Joyce, I want to thank you and AARP. As you know, we actually have an age-friendly cities advisor within the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, a coordinator. And as I'm sure you noted, and other people noted, one of the goals that are specifically stated in RIP is to make sure that there are more units that are accessible to people of all ages and all abilities.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for that. Thank you. Next three, please. Kim.
Tony Jordan, Julia Metz, Sarah Wright. They will be followed by David Sweet, Rosemary Sweet, and Brian Hoop.
Good afternoon. Would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Tony Jordan. I am the founder of Portlanders for Parking Reform. I read a lot of the testimony online, and I want to take a few moments to say that if you read the testimony and just tally up angry people versus supportive people, you'll get two numbers. But if you actually read what people wrote, you'll find a lot of support for affordable housing, for anti-displacement policy, for climate action, and for more trees. And what's amazing is you'll find support for those things across the board. But if you look at the solutions proposed and read the other things people say they want, supporters of RIP are often proposing a cogent, consistent, and serious plan for more housing, more affordable housing, and to take serious climate action. Opponents of RIP would have you believe that simultaneously this is a plot to raise property taxes and to destroy the property tax base. It's simultaneously going to produce less burning, but where will I park? We can't expect to have affordable housing, green space, more trees, less traffic, safer streets, and better transit if we keep building a city based around cars. We can't make progress on climate action unless we build more compact cities that provide places for people to live at all income levels near transit, shopping, recreation, and areas of opportunity. A fair portion of the opposing testimony I read could be considered classist, and some of it worst. But mostly I would say it was afraid of change and ill-informed about what really makes up the residential project proposal. Unfortunately, misinformation, conspiracy, and fear drive a lot of decisions in our recent years. And I hope that you can be brave enough to set Portland on a sustainable course so we have a fighting chance for the future. Please approve RIP with the Portland Neighbors Welcome and ADPDX proposals.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to testify and for the time and effort that you, your staff, and Bureau staff have put into this proposal. My name is Sarah Wright. I'm testifying on behalf of Oregon Environmental Council in support of allowing more density in single-dwelling zones. Oregon Environmental Council has been engaged on land use policy for half a century, and the growing importance of mitigating climate change gives this work greater urgency. The residential infill project proposal is an opportunity to change city policy shaping residential redevelopment over time to be more energy efficient, more supportive of transit, biking, and walking for transportation, and more accessible for more people. I have other points, but I feel like a lot of people have made them already very cogently. So I just want to say the Oregon Environmental Council encourages you to make the most of this opportunity. Please amend the proposal to implement the deeper affordability option and commit to the citywide renter protections advocated by Anti-Displacement PDX. This is an opportunity to move toward a more equitable and sustainable future for the city that we love. Oregon Environmental Council urges you to vote to strengthen and support it and implement it as soon as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to
Thank you for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Julia Metz, and I'm an affordable housing developer with Catholic Charities of Oregon. Today, I'm also representing Housing Oregon Portland Metro Policy Council, which consists of a diverse set of organizations from across the Portland metro area. From providers of multifamily affordable rentals to those that focus on affordable homeownership opportunities at precisely the scale that the residential infill project would allow. We all recognize that providing housing opportunities across the income and scale continuum is key to resolving our housing crisis. That is why, with some of the additions and considerations noted in our letter, we support the adoption of the residential infill project. While we foresee this providing a variety of housing types across many income levels, due to economies of scale, as proposed, we see the most potential for the RIP to serve households in the 60 to 80% AMI range. This is a vast improvement over what we can do now, and it also correlates with existing affordable homeownership subsidies. In essence, the types of developments allowed by the RIP acts as a 2-for-1 by allowing someone that's ready to graduate into home ownership to do so, and thus opening up regulated affordable rentals for lower income households. We are excited that even with overall decrease in building scale, the RIP also supports affordable family-sized homes, reflective of homes currently being developed by organizations such as Habitat for Humanity and PCRI. We also support City Council in considering taking this a step further with the deeper affordability bonus as outlined in the attachment to our letter. This would help us serve more households with less subsidy and/or serve households at even lower income levels. Lastly, we believe the RIP is an anti-displacement tool in and of itself. We caution City Council against delaying adoption and of wholesale removal of areas from the currently proposed plan. Not only would this have implications on displacement elsewhere, but it would also hinder the ability for affordable housing developers to develop regulated affordable housing in these areas. Instead, we encourage you to consider ways to incentivize affordable housing development in these areas. Some examples are included in our letter as well as further points. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mayor, if I might.
Commissioner Hardesty.
I have a question.
Of course.
First, Tony, thank you for bringing some laughter to this chamber this afternoon. I thought we were all going to be very stiff-faced for the whole time we're here, so I greatly appreciate your sense of humor. But I had a question for you. I think there's this misperception that RIP is going to create affordable housing opportunities. And so I just want to check if that's, because you said something about this would be 60 to 80% of MFI, and I don't believe that is so. I believe what RIP does is create another income level of housing. RIP will not provide affordable housing. No one is suggesting that RIP is the solution to our housing crisis. It's just another level of housing affordability. But so I just want to check myself. Maybe, am I wrong?
Maybe I could clarify. So the point I was making is from regulated affordable housing developers. And so we have many of our organizations that are very eager for RIP to pass in order to develop at that level.
But again, I don't want the assumption to be if we pass RIP, somehow we're building housing at 60 to 80% of the MFI, because that's simply not true. One is not tied to the other. Right? It's a continuum of housing.
Correct. It's
right?
all a piece of the puzzle.
Right, because I keep hearing incentive, 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 and that's not, we're not about incentives today. We're about expanding the housing opportunities. So I just want to be clear about that, because I thought maybe I was in the wrong meeting and I kept hearing that. So thank you.
Fair, thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. Next three, please, Keelan.
David Sweet, Rosemarie Sweet, Brian Hoop, followed by Holloway Huntley, Ted Labby, and Mary Ellen Reed.
Good afternoon. Would you like to start,
Afternoon.
please?
Sure. My name is Rosemarie Sweet, and I live in the Cully neighborhood in Northeast Portland. I'm the chair of the board of Our 42nd Avenue, which is a neighborhood prosperity initiative in one of the business districts in my neighborhood. I'd like to talk today about the important synergy between more housing and a thriving business district. So our 42nd Avenue does more than recruit businesses to the avenue. It helps to build relationships among community members so that we can support those entrepreneurs among us who dream of starting and growing businesses on 42nd Avenue. And we especially seek to help community members with barriers to obtaining the support and the funding, the capital needed to start businesses. So, as you know, in the best of circumstances, a local community-serving business has an uphill climb. If we're to succeed in creating walkable neighborhoods where people's needs are met without long auto trips out of the area, then we must do all we can to ensure their success. One critical part of that is to welcome more residents into our neighborhoods, thereby creating more patrons, supporters, and possibly owners of other community-based businesses. The residential infill project will allow more housing types and more housing to be built. Given the size restrictions being imposed on the new houses, they are likely to be more affordable than the houses that are being built now in Cully on single lots. This initiative will use land in Cully more efficiently, allowing residents to do internal conversions or add ADUs, and all these homes are likely to be within walking distance of the 2 business districts in our neighborhood. Walkable, diverse, vibrant neighborhoods with thriving commercial districts don't happen by accident. They are the result of planning and of investment. Prosper Portland has invested in neighborhood prosperity programs in underserved communities. If it's coupled with the city's proposed zoning changes to increase housing, we can make some real strides. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is David Sweet. I represent the Cully Association of Neighbors. We love our neighborhood. We love the economic and ethnic diversity of Cully. We want a Cully where everyone is welcome, young and old, rich and poor, renter and homeowner, citizen and recent immigrant, lifelong resident and new arrival. We want anyone and everyone who wants to live in Cully to have an opportunity to do so. We are also involved in efforts to improve our streets, sidewalks, parks, and commercial districts, and we recognize that those improvements will make Cully more attractive to developers, investors, and home buyers, driving up prices and causing displacement. That's our dilemma. But we are unwilling to choose between greater livability for all our residents on the one hand and preventing the displacement of our most vulnerable neighbors on the other. We insist on both. That is why we enthusiastically endorse the residential infill project, which is projected to reduce the risk of displacement in Cully and citywide. In fact, adopting these reforms will further 8 of the 12 goals that we set down 4 years ago in our Inclusive Cully policy, which I have shared with Council in the past. It will encourage the development of smaller, lower-cost homes rather than the large ones currently being built. It will create opportunities for older adults to downsize and stay in Cully. Greater density will support our Cully business districts and better bus service. It will create opportunities for nonprofit developers to build affordable housing in Cully, especially if you approve the deeper affordability bonus. Please help the Cully neighborhood in our efforts to prevent further displacement by adopting the residential infill project without delay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And since you mentioned it, Commissioner Hardesty asked a really good question, and I think it warrants a clarification. There is no direct subsidy that this particular program puts forward, but what it does do is it provides the zoning overlay that lessens the requirement for a subsidy because the developers can actually spread it over more homes. So
Yes.
her question was a really good one, and I think it does warrant clarification. But in the absence of RIP, the actual subsidy required to develop affordable housing at any level, whether it's 60, whether it's 30, goes up fairly dramatically. So this actually reduces the subsidy required.
It does, and the deeper affordability bonus that's being advocated would actually create opportunities for nonprofit developers, and there are 3 working actively in the Cully neighborhood who could build housing that in these 6 or 8 plexes that are being proposed that would be permanently affordable.
Which gets me to my favorite word in the English language, which is leverage. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that later as well. Thank you for your testimony. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and council members. My name is Brian Hoop, Director of Housing Oregon, which Julia Metz from Catholic Charities just spoke earlier, representing us and our policy council, and submitted our testimony in support already. I wanted to speak to this issue that Commissioner Hardesty has brought up. Implementing the residential infill project provides a great opportunity for our member organizations to take to scale projects that they've already begun to implement in the past few years. Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives, Inc., Hacienda CDC, Habitat for Humanity, Portland Metro East, and Proud Ground, who Diana and Lynn already spoke, and other member organizations have exciting existing efforts and are poised to expand developing more affordable housing with RIP in place. And specifically, we believe the deeper affordability bonus being proposed provides a path forward to serving more households at lower incomes below that 60% area median income that I think Commissioner Hardesty is concerned about, below that 60% area median income. Two examples, PCRI's Pathway 1000 initiative, a program to mitigate and prevent involuntary displacement in North and Inner Northeast Portland, has a great potential to ramp up and meeting their goals of creating 1,000 affordable homes for purchase, taking advantage of the new opportunities that RIP provides. Hacienda CDC is piloting an ADU program that offers the potential to build many more small-scale cottages in the backyards of low to middle-income homeowners, matching them up with low-income tenants, providing them with regulated rent for 10 to 15 years. And after that, the accessory cottages revert back to control of the property owner. Other considerations to highlight that we've identified. One, we want to point out we strongly support the existing language that allows for lot divisions with attached houses in certain instances, and we encourage City Council to work with staff to explore ways to expand these opportunities. And second, elimination of the parking requirements for housing in these zones is key to providing the flexibility needed to develop infill sites efficiently and affordably.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Appreciate it.
Holloway Huntley, Ted Labby, Mary Ellen Reed, followed by Mike Westling, Robert Liberty, and Hank Stowers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone for all of your work on this. My primary goal is to not get beeped at, so I feel good. I'm under a page here. My name is Holloway Huntley. I'm testifying in favor of RIP, as is, with no major amendments that would extend the timeline for adoption. Professionally, I'm a residential general contractor working in Closa in Portland, and I'm also a member of DRAC, but I'm not here representing that committee today. Last year, I bought 2 lots in St. John's. I was fortunate enough to do that. And if RIP passes, my potential plan would be to build a triplex, to condominiumize that triplex, and then sell them at what I would consider well below what a single-family residence would sell for. RIP would allow for more approachable, not more affordable, and thank you for bringing that up. I think that's very important. We're all using that term way too loosely. But what I would consider to be more approachable home ownership opportunities to folks who are excluded from that now. There'd be an economy of scale under RIP not seen under current code. My bottom line is the same under either version of the code, but passing RIP would give me the opportunity to be a more responsible developer, giving back to my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. My name is Ted Labby, and I'm with the Urban Green Spaces Institute and DPAVE. As a green spaces advocate, I am here today to urge you to move ahead with the residential infill reform with the amendments that have been suggested to you by Portland Neighbors Welcome. I would encourage you to legalize fourplexes by right, adopt a deeper affordability amendment for 6 to 8 units, and embrace the anti-displacement PDX renter protections. And I had the pleasure of watching the 3-hour work session in December, and I want to thank Commissioners Hardesty, Udaley, and Fritz for the hard questions you gave staff around displacement, and I know you're chewing over those thoughts, and I feel good to having you on the job.
Thank you. I was laughing because anybody who spent time watching 3 hours of public testimony is my new hero.
The racist history around our zoning, I would encourage more. I'm using my time. Anyway.
That was a great presentation.
Today, I want to talk about trees. As a green space
Wait a
advocate.
minute. I want my equal time since you skipped over me.
Great job, Mayor.
I want to remind people I funded that in the budget.
You did. You asked great questions too. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Fritz, did you want in on this?
A common sentiment that developers are felling Portland's big old trees and knocking down older, affordable homes to make way for high-priced homes. I want to speak to that issue today. As a tree advocate, I'm here to support RIP. RIP is not a threat to trees. The reforms eliminate on-site parking minimums, reduce the size of homes, and do not expand building footprints. As a result, they actually create more space for trees. RIP gives more flexibility for people who want to adapt existing residential building stock and incentivizes reuse over total redevelopment. On-site parking competes for space with trees and housing and adds to housing costs. On-site parking limits where trees may be preserved and planted both in yards and street or right-of-ways. Curb cuts eliminate space for trees. Lastly, let's talk about access to green space. Renters, people of color, and low-income Portlanders concentrate in under-treed districts. We know this from our urban forestry program work, in multifamily zones. Making access to urban tree cover an environmental justice challenge for the
30
city.
more seconds.
Creating more affordable units in Portland's well-treed single-family residential zones actually creates more access to green space, and it does so quickly, rapidly. So that, as a green space advocate, I would encourage you to move ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Ellen Reed. I'm speaking as a private resident of Collinsview neighborhood. The Collinsview neighborhood association board will submit written testimony.
Thank you.
I propose that the city designate separate timelines for application of the RIP policy in different areas due to infrastructure needs. Portland is diverse people-wise and geography-wise. This is not news. Mandating one schedule for the entire city does not level the playing field. Portland Southwest is the far western frontier as far as city street maintenance goes. 81% of Southwest streets are maintained by the city, and 15.6% are maintained by adjacent property owners. It has the highest percentage of streets paved without curbs, 40.9%, and unpaved streets. 25.3% of the streets have sidewalks. This is less than half of the next lowest neighborhood coalition sidewalk coverage, East Portland, at 52%. Only 33.9% of the Southwest arterial streets have sidewalks, also the lowest arterial street sidewalk coverage of all the neighborhood coalitions. These are safety and equity stressors right now, guaranteed to be more urgent and critical with the pressures of infill and density. Thank you for addressing all facets of equity for all our people, for all our areas, including equity for seniors, low income, and attention to the existing challenging geography, topography, and infrastructure failures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, all three of you. Next three, please.
Mike Westling, Robert Liberty, Hank Stowers, followed by Robin Harmon, Erica Kennel, and Ian McKenzie.
Is that anything you said, Mr. Liberty?
She's walking out in advance of your testimony. How does that make you feel?
It's a new low for me, but there's been many before it.
Good afternoon. Why don't you start, please?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioner. My name is Mike Westling. I live in the Concordia neighborhood. Last time I was in this room was to testify in support of the Fair Access in Renting ordinance that helps reduce discrimination in the tenant screening process. Today I'm here to encourage you to take another step to improve access to housing options across the city of Portland by updating our zoning code to allow for duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in every residential neighborhood with additional units if those units are affordable to Portlanders with lower incomes. I want to talk about a bit about the difference that housing options can create for families. I've lived in 9 different duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in my life. The first was the duplex my parents were renting when they brought me home from the hospital. At the time, my mother was working as a bank teller, and my father was working at a slaughterhouse to pay his way through college. Living in a duplex in a walkable neighborhood gave my family an economic opportunity that helped to set me and my siblings up for success. Since then, I've lived in duplexes and triplexes in Madison, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in Washington, D.C. Each time, the availability of this housing type allowed me to live in a neighborhood that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford. Now, as a homeowner, I look around at my neighborhood in Northeast Portland. I see space for more people to take advantage of the parks, the playgrounds, the grocery stores, the small businesses, the university, and the brand new K-8 school that are all within walking distance of our home. The problem is that the only housing type allowed in my block is a single-family home, and that's not affordable for most people. The ad in my neighborhood newspaper just listed the median home price there at over $500,000. My family couldn't afford to live where we do if we bought a home today. In many ways, proximity has become the equivalent of opportunity in Portland. The location of housing options is just as important as how many options are available. It's past time that we open up our residential neighborhoods to more people than just those who can afford the skyrocketing cost of single-family homes. I'm currently 35 years old, and my wife and I have 2 sons, aged 2 and 4. We plan to live in our home for the next 30 years, and we welcome new neighbors living in single-family homes and in ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. That's the kind of community I want to be a part of for the long term, one that has the housing options to accommodate families of all types.
Thank you so much. You next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Hank Stowers, and I'm here today on behalf of Sunrise PDX. We are a growing movement of young people that are worried about climate change and investing in creating a just and sustainable future. Thank you for your time. Today, I would like to share a brief message about legacy. As I believe you all know, the history of this city has been marred repeatedly by policies that champion racism and classism. From sundown laws to single-family zoning, the city's legislative core will forever be remembered as one that shirked inclusivity and championed discrimination. Legacy is different than history. The difference is simple: opportunity. While this council cannot alter the past, you have before you the unique opportunity to alter the future. Legalizing sustainable housing density, adopting a compassionate affordability amendment, and prioritizing renter protection over landlord income will alter the future of this city. This is the bounty of legacy, the opportunity which has been afforded to you today. You have the power to end a chapter in history. You have the power to begin a new chapter. Endings are critical and impactful. Homelessness ends with a home. Greenhouse gas emissions end when we admit that our carbon footprint is a reflection of our square footage. Communities end when the space between us is too great to commune. Beginnings are also critically impactful. Oppression begins when an opportunity for prosperity is quelled by inaction and exclusion. Healing and regeneration begin when you honor and respect the pain that has been caused by our history. Flourishing begins when you have the empathy and compassion to provide your residents and your community with the opportunity to live affordably and close to one another. As such, I support the most ambitious, empathetic, and legacy-defining version of the residential infill project, as recommended by Neighbors Welcome. Thank you for your time, and thank you for acting with empathy in this critical moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I'm Robert Liberty. I was born in the city, and I've lived here the last 38 years. I urge you to adopt the thoughtful, well-crafted recommendations from the residential infill project. I offer one special endorsement, one important caveat, and one fact. Special endorsement is that implementing the RIP will be a major contributor to achieving the city's greenhouse gas reduction goals. I've been working on reducing driving with state agencies and regional organizations in California for 3 years. The California Air Resources Board made infill and redevelopment a key strategy for achieving those goals. The important caveat is that the adoption of these zoning reforms must be accompanied by immediate and vigorous efforts to help residents in the neighborhoods most likely to be affected by these changes, to help them surf the gentrification wave instead of be washed away by it. I believe that city financial support, modest financial support, incentives, and information services, combined with creative efforts by nonprofit organizations, community groups, and for-profit enterprises, can enable residents to remain in their homes, acquire wealth while providing a range of new ownership and rental housing opportunities. There are many people and organizations ready and willing to help meet this challenge to find creative solutions. Now the fact. This is about accessory dwelling units. Portland State University commissioned a $20,000 survey of residents and owners. And a significant share, unfortunately I didn't find my presentation, but a significant share of those are affordable to people at 60 to 80% of median household income for the small households, 1 and 2 persons in them. So I think it does actually add to supply, and I think modest incentives could expand that supply and make the rents affordable. We have the opportunity to create economically, racially, and ethnically diverse neighborhoods, which will be good for the city and a model for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, all 3 of you.
The next 3 are Robin Harmon, Erica Kennel, and Ian McKenzie, followed by Eric Lindsay, Joshua Baker, and Andre Ba.
Would you like to start, please? Thank you.
My name is Ian McKenzie. I want to start by offering my condolences to you all
I don't know how Commissioner Fitch would have voted on this proposal, but I do know how often he commented on how much he enjoyed land use hearings. I know he would have loved being here today, and his presence is missed. I'm here to support the residential infill project. It's now almost 16 years since the first summer I spent living in Portland, and over 10 years since I moved here permanently. In that time, the city has changed a lot, in some ways for the better, and in some ways for the worse. One of the changes that is certainly for the worse has been the increasing cost of housing. I live in Sunnyside, just off southeast Belmont. Last night, I looked up on Redfin what the median listing price in my neighbourhood was in the last month. It was $737,000. That's only affordable to very high-income households or those with large amounts of inherited money. We know that by re-legalizing triplexes and fourplexes, we can create new housing that's affordable to middle-income people, such as myself. Under the Fair Housing Act, the ground floor units in fourplexes need to include features that make them much more accessible to people with mobility limitations. Attached housing, even when built to energy code minimums, is far more energy efficient than detached housing. And while all of that would be good in and of itself, we know that's not where the most urgent housing need is. If I came to you today with a proposal to ban affordable housing on 77% of the residential land in Portland, you'd probably be horrified. But that's what we've done in our zoning code. Affordable housing providers don't build in neighbourhoods like mine, and that's certainly not due to lack of demand. With the deeper affordable housing bonus proposed by Portland Neighbours Welcome, that could change. All that City Council would need to do is adopt the residential infill project with an amendment that mirrors what you just approved as part of Better Housing by Design. Adopting the residential infill project with the deeper affordability bonus won't solve Portland's housing problems alone, but it can make a huge difference. I want to thank City Council for all the work you've done on housing in recent years and all the work that you still have planned. I urge you to vote yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Erica Kennel, and I'm here on behalf of Habitat for Humanity Portland Metro East. The infill program, as it is, supports homes for middle-income earners, people like teachers, maybe even firefighters. But we should be creating a program that also houses lower-income earners, like home health aides, daycare providers, and social workers. About 60% of Portland's white households own their homes, while only about 30% of households of color own the home that they live in. Habitat is serious about addressing this race-based homeownership gap, and unfortunately, it's something that often gets lost in our housing conversations. Over 75% of Habitat homeowners are people of color. We are experts at helping families earning as low as $30,000 a year, helping them to build and buy their first home. Portland Neighbours Welcome has been working with key developers, including Habitat CEO Steve Messinetti, to understand how deeper affordability can be achieved with less subsidy, so every dollar can go even further. I strongly encourage you to dig into these funding models and to seek direction from Anti-Displacement PDX for actionable ways to avoid displacement. RIP could reach communities of color through a deeper affordability bonus amendment that allows affordable homeownership developers like Habitat for Humanity to explore 6 or 8 plexes on these lots, to build permanently, deeply affordable ownership condos. Who owns property in Portland matters. And 10 years from now, if we don't close this racial divide, then we can talk equity all day long, but in the end, we will have failed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Harmon, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm just a citizen that came to the very first infill committee meeting, and then I went to them all. A lot has changed since then. The original objectives have been tossed out, and there's only one discussion, and that is about affordability. My biggest issue is that I think we're all trying to create the best quality of life for all of us. I do not believe that this proposal will do that. There's no mandate for affordability. Commissioner Hardesty, thank you for clarifying that. I'd like to give you a few suggestions, because I know you don't want to just hear complaints, but some suggestions. 1, please honor the very well thought out comprehensive plan. Years went into the making of that. The existing RIP does not respect that. Focus our density along centers and corridors. This encourages the use of mass transit. Scattershot density is not good planning. We have one of the worst parking problems in the nation. Please include street parking. 2, please limit the demolition of existing more affordable housing. This proposal would cause widespread demolitions across the city. It's bad for people, it's bad for the environment. We used to be talking about trying to preserve green space, and there's really no place for green space discussion the way it stands now. It's all about building anything, anywhere across the city without a thought to good urban planning. 2, please implement an anti-displacement policy to minimize the effects of our most vulnerable residents before even considering rest in peace. And thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for saying that you will take as long as it takes to get it right, because your decisions are going to affect the city going forward. My last point is eliminating all single-family residential zoning is like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. The 20008 BPS toolkit has a blueprint of how to include all of those things within our existing framework.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People having only 2 minutes too, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, all
Yeah.
three of you.
Thank you so much.
The next three names are Eric Lindsay, Joshua Baker, and Andre Ba, followed by Susan King, Leslie Hammond, and Emily Kemper.
Would you like to start, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Wheeler and City Council. My name is Joshua Baker, and I live in the Buckman neighborhood. I've lived in Portland for about a decade, but this is actually the first time that I've ever delivered testimony in person, so thank you for the opportunity.
For being here.
I'm here in support of the residential infill project and also the deep affordability amendments. For most of the time I've been in Portland, I've either been a renter in Southeast Portland or Southwest Portland. And like a lot of Portlanders, I do hope one day to either own my own house or a unit in a condo. And hopefully somewhere that's in a walkable, car-free neighborhood. However, our city is on a trajectory where this is likely never to allow me to actually be able to achieve this goal, and it's similar for so many other Portlanders as well. Without this code change and the legalization of fourplexes, my hopes of owning a home continue to evaporate a bit more. And for those making less income from me, the chances of displacement rise even more for them as well. As the data has shown, if today's zoning remains in place, 20 years from now, the average monthly rent for new homes in these zones would skyrocket to more than double what it would be if the residential infill project passes. Passing this is a good right step, just one step that you can take for Portlanders like me and hundreds and thousands of others. Lastly, with over 77,000 Portlander households making less than 60% of the AMI, I do strongly encourage you to support the deeper affordability bonuses that Portland Neighbors Welcome and other groups have been talking about today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he's going to go next.
All right. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of council. My name is Eric Lindsay, and I speak today in support of the residential infill project. And I would also ask for you to please include the deeper affordability bonuses and anti-displacement measures that have been proposed by Portland Neighbors Welcome. I am, shudder, sometimes a developer. And I think it is clear to me and other folks that I speak with that the current RIP draft proposal will lead to more middle-class homes of around 1,000 square feet. And I think that's a great outcome in of itself. And I think a lot of market rate developers like myself are really excited to build homes like that, as opposed to building $1 million McMansions, which I see all over the east side. And, well, I'm not going to say anything about that. What really excites me on an individual level is the proposed affordability, deeper affordability amendment. I'm currently sitting on an empty lot with a little bit of car storage, and I have been eagerly awaiting the RIP, as I have long hoped to build a fourplex there. It's my plan to include one permanently affordable at 80% of MFI unit, as encouraged in the proposed draft. When I heard about the proposed deeper affordability bonus, I immediately started to do financial analysis to see if I could build a sixplex with 3 permanently affordable units at 80% MFI without the need for a subsidy. My analysis came out with a, yes, I can do this. That means that I could make a modest profit and help to house 6 families, 3 in need of affordable units. And for anybody who's wondering where that lot is, it's right next to my own home. And I would be like super jazzed to have 6 new neighbors living right next to me and my family, and like all sorts of new friends for my new daughter. So I also just want to plug for the 8-plex at 60% MFI. I know I've spoken with a lot of the affordable developers, and I think that's just an amazing opportunity going forward to have that model in place. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name is Andre Baugh. I am a former planning commissioner. I was on the planning commission for 10 years, was a chair for, I think, about 3 or 4, and my last vote was on RIP. I led the effort to the no. I represent the 4 no votes. So,
Thanks for that. Appreciate your help with that.
But to unpack that, I was not all no against everything in here. The issue is RIP is not about affordability. It really is not. The affordability got hijacked in this. If you look at it, everything is inexpensive, but it is not affordable. Even under the new proposal, you're still at market rate. Market rate is not affordable. There's nowhere in the comp plan, unless it's changed in the last 9 months since I left, that says affordable in the comp plan. Secondly, the displacement is about the American dream. You heard that there's 30% minorities that own homes in Portland. Those are the people, when you look at the Appendix B and look at the map, it's East Portland. You're talking about homeowners in East Portland that are low-income minorities that are at risk of displacement. What tools do we have? Mayor, you've talked about the tools for renters, but for homeowners to stay in their home. We've seen this movie before, North and Northeast Portland, and we're spending tens of millions of dollars trying to bring people back in. We're going to do this again to probably hundreds of thousands of people and put them at risk over a policy today? Let's get some tools in place. Let's get money in place. I proposed if I can go on a little bit.
No, I'm sorry. 2 minutes each.
Plus, Commissioner Fritz actually has a question for you.
Okay.
Thank you, colleagues. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm concerned that we had a half an hour from the chair of the Planning and Sustainability Commission at the work session saying why we should do it, and we didn't hear from the minority. So I would like Andre to have some more time to explain his concerns and the concerns of the other people of color and the commissioner from East Portland as to why there was such dissent and disagreement on the Planning Commission.
We have the request from a commissioner without objection.
No objection.
Why don't we give you
I
another,
think
can you do it in another minute, Andre?
Yeah,
Sure.
the rationale is you're creating opportunity. That opportunity is wealth. The RIP doesn't work without wealth having. The concern was there's no tools. My proposal at the commission was let's give these people at risk tools to take advantage of the opportunity. Otherwise, it's not an opportunity. It is just a spear of displacement. And we didn't see the tools. We, as a planning commission, can't provide those tools. You know, you can deepen what they call affordability, but it really doesn't give a tool to have someone take advantage of an opportunity to build more housing. Essentially, they sell their homes and they leave Portland. And there's nowhere, when Northeast Portland occurred, they moved to East Portland. Where do they go from here? And the concern from many of the commissioners that voted was, where do they go?
So let me ask you a question, and then I'll yield to Commissioner Udaley. But as I understood the minority report, the concern was, first of all, I think people stipulate that the report demonstrated that overall affordability would improve. Second of all, it stipulated that displacement overall would decrease. The concern was there was concentration of displacement, particularly in 3 areas, and I believe it's Brentwood, Darlington, Lens, and Montevilla, east of 82nd.
Yes.
And as a result of that, it was requested of the council that we support funding a specific anti-displacement strategy that would look at those 3 areas, target those 3 areas, and fund solutions in those 3 areas to overcome that clear weakness in the overall strategy. And it was my understanding that some of the minority opinion, I mean, the smaller number of people who are voting, it was because they wanted that kind of a strategy in place. Now, if we're successful in addressing the displacement in those 3 areas, would you still oppose RIP on the whole?
It depends on if the tools are in place, the money is in place in sufficient quantity to take care of the displacement. And I don't think this is a $1 million problem. I think this is a lot of money problem. So the proposal I had was to give 5 years, for council to get 5 years to get up to speed, get all the money in place, get actual groups willing to do the work, and get people educated before you implement. So give yourself some time to do that. Yes, our proposal was, let's get tools in place before you implement in these areas that had a high risk of displacement. Now, staff was not supportive of that, I will tell you, but that was our proposal.
Commissioner Daley, then Commissioner Hardesty, and then
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Fritz, if she'd like.
Andre, I want to thank you for your service and also for your testimony today, and just say that I share your concerns about the lack of anti-displacement measures being woven into RIP. And it's something that I've been hammering on for the last 3 years. We are attempting to correct a racist history of social engineering through public planning and zoning codes, but without protecting the very people who those codes were meant to exclude. I am afraid of the potential impact. My office advanced a directive on anti-displacement, which is, I think, being worked on. We're trying to advance a tenant opportunity to purchase, which would help renters purchase their units if they go onto the market. And we've also been trying to work with the private market to develop a loan product that would actually be accessible to average income homeowners, because in addition to being concerned about how this may impact communities of color and low-income residents, I'm concerned about the fact that the benefits of RIP to individual homeowners, because there are a lot of potential benefits to RIP that everyone can realize, whether they own homes or not, but the potential benefits to those individual homeowners can't be realized, like you said, unless they sell their home, because the average income homeowner cannot finance the development of an ADU. I know there's people in this room who are trying to solve that problem. I'm trying to solve that problem. I would just be really interested in any thoughts you have on additional measures.
I think trying to solve that problem, especially for single homeowners, especially when you look in the neighborhoods that we're talking about, these are working people. This is not a homeless crowd. These are hardworking individuals. And trying to give them an opportunity to stay in their home, take advantage of the wealth opportunity, build ADU. I'm not against ADUs. I'm just saying, how do we get them money? Because they can't go to a bank. You know that. They're not walking into the U.S. Bank or, First Interstate or whatever and saying, hey, I need $200,000 to build an ADU. They're just trying to make the note, pay the car, and do these things that are simple basics. So we need to give them tools to be able to access capital, access how to do it smartly, and build that wealth for the future generations, which everybody else gets to do.
Yeah. It's the wealth building component that if we were able to deliver that, this would be a truly meaningful, kind of beautiful remedy to those past harms, because we know that we've robbed communities of color in particular of the opportunity to build wealth over generations. So I hear you, and I'm not giving up. I'm
appreciate that.
I'm largely supportive of RIP, but I'm also supportive of the deeper affordability incentives or bonuses, and I can't support RIP without a real commitment to these anti-displacement measures.
I think that's the key is, and I can't speak for all the people that voted no, but I would say the majority of them, if there were tools in place that had the ability to take advantage of the opportunity, some people may sell, that's your private business, but if you have the opportunity and it's a real tool, and the city does offer that, or however you fashion it with private industry, then I think there would have been more ability to have a broader vote. There still may be one or two that vote no, because displacement is an ugly issue. It's about people and families and those type of things. But I think there is an opportunity to do more from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty, then Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I just want to say to the public, we're taking a little longer because of the position of the Planning Commission when they presented this proposal in front of us, and their 5-4 vote. So I don't want people to feel that they're being disrespected because we're trying to desperately keep people to 2 minutes per testimony. But because we went there, I want to remind folks that if we do nothing, we will continue to have McMansions being built all over the city of Portland with no regulations. People of color will continue to be displaced. They will continue to have a hard time finding rental units. And so it is not so I just want to say, if we do nothing, if we take your advice and just wait 5 years, there won't be any conversation to be had. Because quite frankly, all the development would have already taken place, and people of color would no longer live in the city of Portland. And so, I think that we're creating false choices for ourselves. I have talked to the community groups who want to be part of the anti-displacement committee, and they have been very clear that they don't want us to rush putting that committee together. They want us to be thoughtful. They want us to make sure that we are representative with that committee. So we can't do anti-displacement today, right? Because quite frankly, if we were gonna do it, we would have done it when 10,000 African-American homeowners were displaced up from inner Northeast Portland, right? So so if we did nothing, if the city council just said, okay, let's just kind of wait and see, and let's talk to people and make sure that we've got all the anti-displacement stuff in place, guess what? Wouldn't matter, because there would be no opportunity at all. And so I hope that we don't talk on the edges, because what I believe is that we will pass RIP. The question is, what are we going to do to make sure that we are not displacing community members? I live in East Portland today, and there are a lot of homes, empty nesters, right? Big, beautiful homes with 1 or 2 people living in it, right? We have an opportunity to do something better than we've ever done before. And I don't want to be fear-based and not moving forward. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. I didn't have a question. I thought I did, but apparently I didn't. I just wanted to say what I wanted to say.
I would say I absolutely agree with you. I'm not suggesting you not do something. I'm suggesting you do something that is trying to preserve the people that you're trying to give an opportunity to. And if just passing it as is and moving on and hoping is not a good strategy. And it's not a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz had a question.
Oh, okay.
Or several, possibly. Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you, yes. And I just want to note that Andre Barr was a chair of the Planning Commission when we were doing the Portland Plan, when we were doing the comprehensive plan. He was very supportive, as was the entire Planning Commission, of doing something like RIP. My question, though, is the comprehensive plan says that we should do infill in centers and corridors. And so was there a discussion at the Planning Commission about the effects of doing infill all over everywhere without looking at how do people get to transportation, how do they get to grocery stores? What about Vision Zero? The Collins View representative brought up the issue of lack of sidewalks. Was there discussion at the Planning Commission about safety as well as about the climate crisis?
There was a discussion about, I'll walk through them. There was a discussion about sidewalks, and some areas were excluded because of sidewalks, drainage, and some other issues. So you do see that. Around transportation, there was a discussion, but the majority felt that the transportation, because transportation investments were continuing to grow, that people would be within transportation districts that could still meet the transportation. I'm not fully supportive of that, but I think overall, if the city continues to make heavy investments in transportation, especially around buses in East Portland and some other places, yes, you're going to have that. I don't know that it's a one-to-one trade-off of building 4 units and having people walk 2 blocks, especially in East Portland where there's a lot of missing sidewalks. So the investment of sidewalks was used as a counter to that argument, that the sidewalks were coming, and so if you built the 4-plex, that would work from that standpoint.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Can I just take?
We actually need to, we're on 34 out of 80
2 seconds. I just want to thank Commissioner Fritz and Fish for their 10 years of support. It was perfect. I enjoyed my time on there, and thank you.
We appreciate your service. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
Next 3, please.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
Next 3 are Susan King, Leslie Hammond, and Emily Kemper, followed by Larry Cross, Jonathan Greenwood, and Brandon Marimore.
And just a time check, we just finished number 34 out of 80. I'm going to dice it up. Would you like to go ahead and start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Kemper. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm an alumnus of the Residential Infill Project Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I'm also on a state code board for residential and manufactured structures, and I'm a voting member of the South Portland Land Use Committee, but I'm here today representing myself. In the time since the RIP was initially proposed, we've had 2 mayors and 5 of the hottest years in the recorded history of the planet. We've heard a lot of really great and valuable points here today, and I've appreciated the discussion. The point that I'd like to make, though, is that housing policy is climate policy, and although I believe our city is kind of behind on both, I think that we do have a good chance to change that with the RIP. Especially if we consider proposed amendments for affordable housing. I think the RIP will provide us with more opportunities to house more people affordably and in ways that will allow our city to grow more sustainably. If we have the courage to move forward with the RIP, we will be leading many of our urban neighbors to the north and south and acknowledging that there is work to be done to fix the racially motivated zoning established by previous generations. The RIP will also give us a fighting chance at reducing our collective carbon footprint. I don't believe the RIP is perfect, as I gather that many people don't, but I do believe it's a substantial step in the right direction. For this reason, I'd ask you to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and to please vote yes on the residential infill project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Hammond, and I'm the chair of the Southwest Neighborhood Coalition, which is 17 neighborhoods strong and about 70,000 people. We're a participatory organization. I've listened to what people have said, and so I'm going to alter my comments and hope that I don't run out of time, which I did last time, and say what I want to say today. I would say what the Southwest neighborhoods have looked at and would support are some of the amendments that the Portland Coalition for Historic Resources has offered to you in a lengthy analysis of the current RIP, as well as the information and ideas from the East Moreland Homeowners Association. We would support those. We also support directing density within and around city centers and corridors where it's appropriate and you have adequate, reliable transport. We support density in single-family neighborhoods where that development is tied to affordability, which is tied to a medium a median family income, 60% or less. We'd like to take our share of the burden of increasing housing in our neighborhoods, but we want to make sure that what's done there is affordable for people and it's not just a continuation of building houses that don't help with the affordability problem. We support development which respects and is consistent with neighborhood context. We suggest you delay passing the RIP until the LCDC develops the rules around House Bill 2001 and 2003 so that what you do is consistent with what the state is saying. We support delaying the RIP, especially until you get your anti-displacement policies and ideas lined up, so we don't end up seeing some of our neighbors leave the neighborhood and not be able to return because new construction or remodeling makes the rents and the purchase prices higher instead of lower. We do not support middle housing, quite frankly, where you don't support off-street parking. We need off-street parking. In the Southwest Portland, we don't have a transit system that can get us around the city, so we need to have you reconsider that. And then lastly, thank you. We're here to help. If you want some advice or you want people to help you on this, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. We appreciated your written testimony last time as well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, members of the commission. My name is Susan King. I'm a Portland native and a resident of the Hayhurst Neighborhood Association in Southwest Portland. I'm here today to ask you to delay any further discussion, modification, or decisions on the residential infill project until the impact of House Bill 2001 and related statutes are known. I've been appointed as an alternate to the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, and I serve on the Middle Housing Technical Committee. We've had a couple of meetings, and I can tell you the questions and the lack of clarity is pretty big on this. There's far more unknown than known. How this will affect the RIP, how these bills will affect the RIP is unknown at this time. I also would like to raise the issue that Commissioner Fritz has raised a number of times, and that is, it's unclear to me why the effort, thought, and resources put into the development of the 2035 comprehensive plan are being ignored for this new proposal. As others have said, the core underlying tenet of this has not changed. That is, the plan directs density around corridors and centers where there is adequate public transportation and the opportunity to reduce the use of car transit. That has not changed. Public transportation, as I said, is a major feature of the comprehensive plan, and in my neighborhood, there's insufficient public transportation to support it as an alternative to the use of cars for errands, jobs, and family support. And land inventory. According to the buildable land inventory of 2015, Portland's existing zoning already provides a sufficient 20-year sufficient supply of land for all types of housing, including those now named middle housing. And despite opinion to the contrary, pro formas for new building in many areas of the city reveal that the new units allowed under the RIP will not necessarily meet affordability standards for the most price-affected residents. I've submitted longer written testimony online, and I'd appreciate you reviewing that. Thank you.
We will. Thank you. Next three, please.
Larry Cross, Jonathan Greenwood, and Brandon Marimore, followed by Brad Baker, Andre Broughton, and James Peterson.
Good afternoon. Would you like to start, please?
My name is Larry Cross. I own a small house in southeast Portland that I've made completely accessible. I bought it 16 years ago. It has become an example for everyone of universal design, accessibility, sustainability, livability, and visitability. Last month, I attended, along with about 300 other people, including Mayor Wheeler, an age-friendly summit sponsored by ARP. I interpret age-friendly to mean a city where all its citizens, regardless of their age or level of ability, can enjoy and participate in any of the city's functions and social interactions. I offer additional points of view regarding codes, equity, inclusion, diversity, and the other A, accessibility. In a 1-mile radius from my home, new houses have been built, and unfortunately, all of them have the 1 6-inch step, concrete step. That step is not an example of equity and inclusion. Zoning can increase the number of housing units, but I also believe all units, some, not just some, should be barrier-free. Let's see, okay. I do not have an academic or professional background in city planning. However, I describe my credentials as ample and appropriate experience. In conclusion, I believe that an age-friendly community focuses on all ages, including intergenerational interaction, and all levels of ability with a lens of true equity and inclusion for everyone. I encourage the council to make an age-friendly housing a goal for the 2022-21 state legislature. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. Good afternoon.
Hello, Council and Mayor. My name is Jonathan Greenwood, and I'm here as a member of Portland Neighbors Welcome. I am testifying to express my strong support for the residential infill project and deep affordability amendments. We are experiencing a housing shortage even with the status quo in our city. More people in the coming decades will move here and need options for housing that is affordable. I am of the opinion that housing is a human right. However, I know that is a lofty goal. So I instead wish our city to aim to provide housing for those making minimum wage and those living on the paltry sum Social Security provides. The residential infill project will go a long way to making housing attainable for these populations a reality. I have read some of the online testimony for this measure. Some people claim we will be sacrificing the character of neighborhoods by allowing this measure to pass. I believe that the character of a neighborhood is its populace, not its buildings. Allowing denser neighborhoods will enrich our city in ways we can't even imagine at present. Please heed my expression of support for the residential infill project along with deep affordability amendments. Let's make this a century of housing the poor and disabled and people of color and enrich our city in boundless ways. Let's encourage everyone to live near transit and thrive in greener neighborhoods together. Density is not a bad word, and housing all of the people that want to live here will require it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd love to ask you a question.
Of course.
You said you support RIP with the proposed amendments. Those are not our amendments. These are amendments from community organizations. You did hear earlier me say that RIP has absolutely nothing to do with building housing that's affordable for people at 30, 40, 50, 60% of MFI, right?
Of course,
What we're
yes.
talking about is like that middle housing, right?
Yeah.
So the people who today would go out and want to buy a new house that $500,000 doesn't scare them into running for the hills, right? If we're building 2 or 3 houses on that same lot, and now all of a sudden, rather than $500,000, it's $350,000, right? That's affordable for that individual who thinks $350,000 is a good deal, right?
Right.
So I just want people to be clear that we have an affordability crisis. We also have a middle-income housing crisis. The only people that are doing well are people that can afford the high-end McMansion, right?
Well, the way that I see it is that if we're providing that middle housing, it gives the opportunity for more housing to become available to everyone.
Well, that's our hope. Our
Yeah.
hope is that as people move into this middle housing, right, then the housing that they just moved out of becomes available for other people who are working, who are looking for housing, right?
Yes.
But I get concerned when everybody comes up and says, yes, I support it with this amendment. It is not an amendment we've considered yet. It is not one, quite frankly. This whole RIP does nothing to change the dynamics of affordability, with the exception of home ownership units that won't be $500,000, right? There'll be something less
Right.
than that. So I just want to be clear about that.
I also support allowing up to 8 plexes that would allow for better subsidy for housing.
Maybe it's the term subsidy that makes me nervous that people use, because when I hear subsidy, what I hear is we want government to give money to somebody to do something. So maybe it's just me. I hear that term and I think, oh, you want, because it's not like we have a whole bunch of money just laying around waiting to be used, right? So I am concerned that people have a misperception about what RIP does and what the outcome of actually passing RIP will do. So I just wanted to stop and ask that question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sure, it's not you, it's just, and I didn't just hear it from you, I've heard it from a lot of people. So I just want to be clear, this is not an affordable housing measure at any MFI level.
All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, as the official commission form of government timekeeper, we're going to keep moving forward because it is now 4 o'clock I want to go a little over. I understand we're losing our attorney at 5, but we're going to try and get a replacement. Fabulous. Okay, good. You're next, correct?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. My name is Brandon Naramore. I live at 901 Southwest King Avenue. I am testifying in favor of the residential infill project. I support RIP because frankly, I do not see why duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes are illegal in the first place. These types of middle housing offer better economic integration while also reducing sprawl and displacement. RIP opens up options for a wider diversity of incomes in otherwise exclusive neighborhoods. I can speak to this myself directly. Throughout college, while cash-strapped, I was still able to afford living in the desirable close-in neighborhood of Irvington through splitting rent on a duplex. In a neighborhood where the average home sells for $1 million, my rent was under $1,000. I want more individuals and families to have the opportunity that I had. I want parents to have the choice to live in neighborhoods where their children can walk on safe streets to school while they themselves are spending 15 minutes on their commute instead of an hour. I want more artists, creatives, and eccentrics being able to afford Portland and in turn keeping it weird. I hear a lot from opponents of this plan that somehow by allowing a fourplex, the city is destroying neighborhood character. But what these detractors misunderstand is that a neighborhood's character comes not from the structures but from the folks living inside them. Having more neighbors means having much more character. I also hear lots of hand-wringing about what this plan would do to the parking situation in Portland. I would contend in turn that where parking is lost, so is sprawl. But I won't lie, the outrage over parking is incredibly disheartening to me. In the midst of a housing crisis, some folks are finding more concern for a piece of asphalt than a family being displaced. I'm an assistant property manager for a home forward community. It's a pretty stressful job, and I work with folks that are often in various states of crisis nearly every day. But the part of work that comes home with me the most is the near twice weekly phone calls from someone who's distressed, on the verge of homelessness, and asking if we have any vacancies. In these calls, I have to explain that the wait list is already closed, and I have no idea when they're going to open again. It'll probably be a few years. If the residential infill project prevents even one less such call, then it would be a massive success in my book. That is why I found it necessary to come here to testify in front of you today. Please vote in favor of the residential infill project and consider the deeper affordability options and renter protections advocated by Anti-Displacement PDX.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, all three of you. Next three, please.
Next, we have Brad Baker, Andre Broughton, James Peterson, followed by Dave Johnston, Dixie Johnston, and Mary Vogel.
Yeah, he already testified. It's all right. Welcome.
Hey.
Thank you. Please go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brad Baker. I'm here, I'm going to read a letter that the Elliott Neighborhood Association wrote. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee.
Thank you.
Warning, Commissioner Hardesty, there's some language here that I know, based on your feedback, yeah, you'll.
I'll hold her back.
Yeah, just warning.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah. So, we're writing to ask that you please adopt the residential infill project without further delay. We appreciate the efforts by the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to fulfill the vision of the 2035 comprehensive plan by increasing the amount of housing across the city. We should pass as soon as possible, as an analysis has shown that RIP will reduce displacement relative to the status quo overall, and specifically in our neighborhood, in Elliott. And it will provide more housing options for all Portlanders. We also support the proposed amendments for bonuses, like allowing 8 plexes that are affordable at 60% AMI and the anti-displacement measures. We should pass these amendments, but we should also not hold up passing RIP, since RIP is in itself an anti-displacement measure. The past 4 years of discussion on this plan have already displaced Portlanders. Continued delays in passing this will allow for more displacement. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is James Peterson. I'm the Land Use Chair of Multnomah Neighborhood Association. I just handed the staff 20 questions on RIP that maybe you can examine and ask staff about. We gave them to the director yesterday afternoon. We were hoping to get a response at our meeting last night when she attended. Currently, we filed an objection on the middle housing policy for the 2035 comprehensive plan, and as you probably know, it's pending a ruling. Oral arguments was last week at the Oregon Court of Appeals. If we're successful, it would be remanded back for hearings that based on a factual basis. If you look at the gross scenario report that the 2035 comprehensive plan is based on, the middle housing doesn't exist. It was never part of the growth. And when the comprehensive plan is acknowledged after our appeal is finalized, there is supposed to be a 20-year supply of housing of all types. That's state law. There's plenty of capacity of all housing types in the current comp plan. And it was based upon using our land use goals. So there's a facility plan. If you instantly deregulate single-family housing, the infrastructure just is not there if it was a complete build-out. And it's going to get built based upon market forces. You don't know where these 12 plexes or 8 plexes are going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to have a major problem. So I want to thank you for at least listening to me. Please ask the staff those questions. Read the questions. There's some very good information in there.
Great, and thank you for putting them in writing. That's helpful. Thank you both.
Next, we have Dave Johnston, Dixie Johnston, and Mary Vogel, followed by Maggie McGann, Aaron Brown, and Henry Kramer. Excuse me.
Mary, would you like to start, please?
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Yeah, I better take this off. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler. I'm Mary Vogel. I've worked pro bono for nearly 5 years now with the Portland Small Developer Alliance to help shape a missing middle housing policy in Portland that is part of a climate justice strategy. Climate justice and its subcategory housing justice are the top priority of my Women Business Enterprise Plan Green and myself, and that's who I'm testifying for today. I urge the City Council to not delay any further, rather to pass the residential infill project as conveyed to you by the Planning and Sustainability Commission now, then move quickly to RIP Phase 2. Portland was one of the first U.S. cities to insist that that 20-minute neighborhoods were an important part of any action plan on climate. As the suites from Cully explains so beautifully, RIP will help supply the needed population density to keep and expand the retail and other services needed and extend such 20-minute neighborhoods to other areas of town. When I first returned to Portland from my hometown of Washington, D.C. in 2007, I was recruited to be on a task force that would propose the nation's greenest Green Building Act. That's because I had initiated D.C.'s landmark act that was, at the time, the gold standard. But before that effort went very far, I realized that as the least dense large city on the West Coast, there were more important measures that Portland needed to take to become truly green and resilient. Most of the residential land occupied by single-family homes, making too few of our neighborhoods able to support the services that, well, I'm only one parent, oh, okay, sorry. As a 20-year member of the Congress for the New Urbanism, I was thrilled when CNU came up with its Missing Middle initiative, as well as a small developer initiative, and
Thank
that
you.
would help me to achieve, help Portland to achieve more of its climate goals.
Thank you.
Can you send us your written comments, please?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
in any
I'd like
case,
to
so I'm basically talking about how the, you know,
Thanks, Mary.
the whole act really started, and
I'll look forward to reading it. Thank you, Mary.
The Portland Small Developer Alliance has submitted its written testimony and will be testifying
Good.
tomorrow.
Good, we'll look forward to that. Excellent.
okay.
Thank you very
I'll probably
much.
be back for that.
You bet. Thank you for being here.
probably
We'll
be
look
here.
forward to it.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Could I update, my husband go first, please?
If you ask him to, I'm sure the only answer is yes, dear.
I knew everything she asked.
Please.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm Dave Johnston. I'm the current land use chair of the Collinsview Neighborhood Association, and I've been board chair and land use chair for the past 25 years or thereabouts. And I want to agree with those commissioners that think this residential infill project needs some more work and refinement before it's ready to go. And some of my reasoning with regard to that is, not all neighborhoods are alike in the city. Many of us in Southwest, and I think other areas too, were brought into the city under annexation from the county, and the infrastructure was never brought up to date, even though that's been 50 or 60 years. We don't have streets up to city standards, nor do we have sidewalks or things people need within walking distance, such as grocery stores. It's about 2 miles from where I live to the nearest grocery store of any significance, being a Fred Meyer, and there are not necessarily sidewalks all the way. Geographically, it's a difficult area to bring up to snuff because we have hills and valleys and streams and an irregular street system. We do not have regular transit high-frequency service. We have transit service that runs every 45 minutes or so and only on weekdays. It just is not a good situation to add a lot of people until those things are brought up to urban standards. I've submitted a previous email and would suggest that before we accept RIP, we should look at the difference in the different areas. We should also look at the difference in the proposed code and what is advertised we're going to do. One of the things that I note in that is 33.110.265E talks about only allowing the additional density on paved streets. The code talks about only streets accepted for city maintenance. I suggest there's a difference.
Okay.
We should get them up to snuff first.
Is there any chance, could we get a copy of that at some point? Is it?
Yes, I've submitted it, but I'll give the clerk another
Okay, if you've
copy.
submitted it, we will get it. Terrific. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello, I'm Dixie Johnston, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. I'm going to piggyback on what Dave said, but my testimony is a little bit different from what other people have said today, but I do think it needs to be said. Statute of fraud was mentioned in a land use case before City Council a few years ago. The property owner involved was trying to develop or sell land that he had bought many years before. He's been trying through the city's processes to develop that property, but the steep slopes, the lack of sewer facilities, the lack of water, and other things, other infrastructures that are needed, the lack of road access has made it very difficult for him. He is now in contact with people living out of the state of Oregon who have contacted us asking questions. They're considering buying the site, sight unseen. This is not unusual for developers who have lots of money. He is trying very hard to sell this property. My big question is, was he snookered into buying it to begin with? And we read Wall Street Journal, Tribune, Oregonian, and anything else we can get our hands on to get other perspectives. And one of the things we have found out, think of Bernie Madoff, had good intentions, but he went too far, too fast, and he could not stop. The idea of buying and selling property is like gambling. The competition is harsh, and mergers and acquisitions are addicting, and I really feel like that this project is indeed developer-oriented, and it's making it difficult for the rest of us. It looks like it's not affordable. So please think about this. I do love, Commissioners, the proposal of the anti-displacement action plan.
Thank you. We'll
being
take a look
proposed.
at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, all three of
Thank
you.
you so much.
The next three are Maggie McGann, Aaron Brown, and Henry Kramer, followed by Sean Edging, John Sandy, and Doug Klotz.
I can stay a little bit later. I really want to try to hear it all, but
Would you like to start, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maggie McGann, and I am here to urge you guys to support the RIP. And although I would like to see the amendments come forward to support deeper affordability. So I got involved because I was on the original committee 4.5 years ago. When the project started, I worked for Habitat for Humanity and was a member of this committee. At the time, at Habitat, what I saw what safe, stable, and affordable housing meant to families with whom I worked side by side. And I hoped that working with the RIP, I could help shape Portland in a way that would help bring this opportunity of stable housing to a wider swath of Portlanders. I was hoping that we would find affordable incentives through it from the inception of this project. But it was also clear to me as I struggled through this, I'm just sharing my struggle a little bit because I think it's clear that these zoning changes are market forces. And I think it became clear as I learned this, and that we've all learned it, that we just have tools. These are all tools and all pieces of the puzzle to solve our housing crisis. And what we have is the opportunity to largely use a market-based zoning tool to do that, and then hopefully supplement it with the zoning incentives that help promote affordability. And so that's mostly where I've been coming from. I also wanted to share that since this has started, I just want to let you guys know, I have had a child, I have another on the way, I have changed jobs, I have changed careers, I have got a nursing degree, and I'm excited to be a nurse midwife. I mention this because it's time to move on this. It's just time. I also want to let you know that I'm here because housing is tied to health inextricably, and in my new career, housing is still super important to me because our health outcomes are directly related to our housing outcomes. And I will be submitting written testimony that describes many of the housing impacts of housing on health as we go along.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you've used your time very wisely. Good afternoon, Henry.
Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, my name is Henry Kramer. I live in Northeast Portland. I'm an organizer with Portland Neighbors Welcome, but speaking only for myself today. I'm here to ask you to legalize up to 4 homes on every lot by right and to go further and adopt a deeper affordability amendment to allow up to 8 homes if they're all regulated affordable housing. As for why I think you should do this, I'd like to tell you about my dad, my grandma, and my future kids. My dad's 70 years old this year. He's a recovering alcoholic and heroin addict. He swung a hammer for work all his life, then addiction got him. And even after kicking the habit, he spent years of his life experiencing homelessness right up through a few years ago. Most of my adult life, I've watched him struggle to find and keep a home. He'll cobble together a situation he can afford, and then it'll fall apart over and over for years. Several years back, he found low-income senior housing, and he's been the stablest I've known him in 20 years. When I think of who can benefit from a deeper affordability amendment like being proposed, I think of people like my dad. He doesn't need a lot of space, just a warm, safe little home where he can read a book and play his guitar. We've got affordable housing providers who want to build homes like that. For people like him, please let them do it. At the same time, we can't lose sight of the benefits of legalizing fourplexes by right. I own my home because when my grandmother passed, she left me enough money to make a down payment. I'm very privileged. It was a tradition on the Jewish side of my family since we came to America after fleeing pogroms, help the next generation get a home. I'm terrified that's going to end with me, and I'm furious that other families don't get a chance to begin it. I bought my house in 2014. I wouldn't be able to afford it today. Every single family house in my neighborhood goes for about $500,000 today. If we stay on this trajectory, the next generation will be locked out of homes everywhere in the city. Fourplexes could change that trajectory. They're the only homes shown to be affordable for families making the median income on day one. If we legalize them, there might be enough homes for my future kids to get one, and they might even be able to afford it with a bit of help. I want people like my dad to be able to have a safe, stable, affordable housing in the city. I want people like my future kids to have safe, stable, affordable housing in this city. economical housing. To make that happen, we need fourplexes by right and permanently affordable eightplexes. Please enact the residential infill project with the deeper affordability amendments and the ADPDX suite of proposals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Henry, there are a few people I know who can put such a narrative together in 2 minutes.
He's real good.
Thank you for that.
Especially going from your grandfather, your father, and now your future kids. I mean,
I can't say my name in 2 minutes. So. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Is this on? It is. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Portland City Council. I agree with your comments, Mayor Wheeler. I think Henry's testimony is great, in particular because it highlights this intergenerational issue of housing.
Absolutely.
And if we're talking about breaking the bonds of what's broken in the 20th century and moving forward in the 21st century, I believe that passing a robust residential infill project with the deep affordability bonuses is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be doing to move in that direction. My name is Aaron Brown. I'm a renter in the St. John's neighborhood of North Portland. I'm here with Portland Neighbors Welcome. I want to talk about uncertainty. It's so wonderful it didn't snow this week, right? How much for all of us, I know for the BPS staff and for everyone else that was like, we got to get these earrings on. Can you imagine trying to reschedule this meeting with all the folks that are here, all the work that the city staff has done?
Oh.
Right. How exhausting it is to try and reschedule major things in your life around the weather. Climate change is real, and we are seeing increasingly that cities have the responsibility of stepping up and acting on climate, right? Building dense, walkable communities connected by frequent, reliable transit seems to be the way that municipal leadership on this urgent issue of climate justice, this is the sort of stuff that we're clamoring for cities around the country to take on. And so to build what we want to see in the 21st century, we have to be retiring the systems of inequity and planet destruction that we've had in the 20th century. The whole model of a single-family home with the yard, it's all predicated on some very outdated, classist, racist, and sexist models that was sold as the American dream that we no longer see as relevant, right? We need to be moving forward towards a world where everyone has housing that fits their needs and these different family sizes, these different intergenerational things. We need to be building walkable neighborhoods where it's much easier for people to walk their kids to school as opposed to send their kids to a school in the backyard of a $1.2 billion freeway expansion. We need to be addressing our climate congestion. We need to be addressing traffic congestion, air pollution. This is an anti-poverty initiative. This is an affordability initiative. And I'm asking you to move forward with the numerous voices you're hearing today and support the deep affordability bonuses and everything with the residential info project. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, all three of you.
Next three are Sean Edging, John Sandy, and Doug Klotz, followed by Jim Labby, Corey Poole, and Chris Blackmore.
Okay, great. Great. And then we'll stop there and see where we are with people.
I might like to say a couple things.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and start for us, please?
Okay, I'll
Thank
start. Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, my name is John Sandy. I'm a resident of Northeast Portland. While it is extremely disappointing and frustrating that the real estate market conditions have priced out many Portlanders from living within some of the city's established and walkable neighborhoods, this one-size-fits-all residential infill proposal has some flaws in its attempt to address these issues. I'll point some of these out. Some of these have already been brought up. I'll try to get through them quickly. The shotgun application of missing middle housing is a misuse of the originator's concepts of having these type options as a transition between higher and lower zoning. As has been talked about before, the city's comprehensive plan reflected this understanding by supporting the use of missing middle housing options around neighborhood commercial areas. Just a transit line proximity cannot be sole criteria for this rezoning. Should have other services and grocery stores and restaurants. That's a walkable neighborhood. Point two, the Ramlin application puts smaller, more affordable existing housing stock straight in the crosshairs of developers. Therefore, adds stress to the most vulnerable citizens and potential displacement. This has been talked about. I've got a thing here that needs to be a deep concern of the City Council, which it has been already voiced as. And another point, the loss of potential equity building houses being replaced by mostly rental, that's an issue. One other thing, and I guess I'm unapologetically going to stand up and say, I'm in support of some neighborhoods that I consider Portland gems. And I'm also in support of looking at increasing density within these neighborhoods, but done right. Continuing to have developers carte blanche design license is a travesty, and I'm just saying, in summary, the emotional rush to fix the issue should not abdicate thoughtful and nuanced contemplation and guarded actions to offset unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Doug Klotz. I strongly support the residential infill project. This plan will help reverse the exclusionary zoning that is part of Portland's racist land use history as a small start to rectify those wrongs and reduce displacement by 28%. It will eliminate oversized new houses and reduce one-to-one demolitions. It will allow market rate homes that can be sold or rented for less than a single houses. And duplexes and fourplexes will bring back middle housing and can bring prices down. As far as the frequency, the proximity to transit, was one of the neighborhoods suggested that no new units should be built more than 300 feet from frequent transit. But I live between Hawthorne and Division, and my nearest bus stop is 1,800 feet away, which I regularly walk to. So I don't think keeping things that close to transit is really necessary to make a walkable city. More efficient land use allows more people to live closer to jobs, transit, et cetera. And that includes all those areas I'm talking about. So passing the RIP package does all those things. To make it even better, though, I also support the deeper affordability options that could make RIP even more useful. These would allow nonprofits to build with lower subsidies. Now, I know there's that word. But nonprofits get money from various sources, and I guess the word for that would be subsidy, not necessarily all government. But the sixplex option could have 3 units at 80% MFI, and the eightplex units could have 5 of the eightplex units for sale or rent at 60 MFI. So, I mean, it's still not below 60, but it's better than what we're getting now, and I think we should work on this and the 3 anti-displacement measures that Commissioner Udaley talked about: right to purchase, revenue for supporting affordable housing, and public funds for below-market backyard housing.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Federal funds for what?
Oh, below-market backyard housing, like ADUs, essentially.
That's not on the table yet, but okay.
No, you're right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to testify. My name is Sean Edging. I'm a renter over at 1830 Northeast 57th Avenue. I work as a land use and housing planner, and I'm also a board member on Housing Land Advocates, a Portland-based nonprofit dedicated to the provision of affordable housing for Oregonians. So I made the mistake of writing out my testimony before you guys today, and that was, I had to throw that away, and so I'll be talking to something a little bit different today. So of course, HLA supports the residential infill project. They also support a lot of the amendments that have been proposed by Anti-Displacement PDX and Portland Neighbors Welcome. I think one thing that I wanted to touch on is I understand that you guys have a concern to get things right with the residential infill project. But I also would like to point out that inaction has consequences, as you pointed out, Joanne. Year after year, housing prices have been increasing by substantial amounts, in large part due to an artificial restriction on supply imposed by exclusive single-family zoning, and that needs to change, and it needs to change soon. I'm not trying to argue that RIP is perfect in all respects, nor that you shouldn't absolutely keep pursuing affordability and displacement measures, but I do not believe, or at least I would ask you to consider that delaying RIP or inaction on RIP still has consequences for affordability for Portlanders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done, by the way.
Appreciate your testimony, all 3 of you. Next 3, please, Keelan.
Jim Labby, Corey Poole, and Chris Blackmore, followed by Neil Heller, Diana Gutman, and Al Ellis.
Jim, you want to go ahead and start for us,
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Lots of great discussion today. A lot of great testimony I support. I'm here to support the residential infill project and to speak to the issue of how it affects trees and the city's natural resource policies, although my brother kind of stole my thunder on this.
I was going to say, are you related?
Yeah, it's my older brother. If you can do anything about older brothers being verbose older brothers, let's do that. So a little context. So I served on the Citywide Tree Project Advisory stakeholder committee about a decade ago that put together the Title 11 tree code. I served on the oversight committee in 2015 that reviewed its first year of implementation. I've served on the Urban Forest Policy Committee, and I spent about 13 years working at Audubon Society of Portland on a lot of tree issues. And I'm here really just to dispel the notion that anything in the proposed residential infill project is a meaningful threat to trees or the city's goals for urban forest canopy. And there's a number of reasons for that. It's not a one-size-fits-all project. You're exempting some areas with steep slopes and floodplains. Most importantly, it does increase the maximum lot coverage. And to the extent it reduces the massing, you're actually making more space for tree canopy. But probably the most important thing that makes this policy a positive for the urban trees and the equitability of those benefits across the city is removing the off-street parking requirements. Every time you have most times you have a off-street parking requirement, you're removing a place to plant a street tree. And that's particularly important in places like East Portland that's particularly deficient in street trees. So I could say, whoa, I have another 22 seconds. So that's huge. That's something we looked at the Title 11 Oversight Committee, and it's come up. The impact of parking on trees is underappreciated, and this proposal will be a major step forward for trees, particularly street trees in the city of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. My name is Chris Blackmore. I have a personal story. My husband and I are both artists. I'm a student. He's an adjunct college instructor. Living close to the city's art community is a major priority for us. But a few years ago, in the face of rising rents, we were forced into a decision: become increasingly rent burdened in order to remain close to our community, or follow the lead of several of our peers and leave Portland for a city with rents that are more hospitable to artists. As we weighed our options, the city began allowing tiny house RVs on private property. That's why today we live in a 200 square foot tiny house on wheels in my friend's backyard in inner Northeast. I'm sure to most reasonable adults in this room that seems way too small, but we feel really fortunate to be able to afford a little house that we can call our own. Friends, family, art openings, events, performances in our respective college campuses are all within like biking and transit distance of us. And while that's all great now, getting this house was stressful and a huge amount of work. It wasn't easy. It was a huge accomplishment. It was a cool experience, but it took a year of planning and involved coordinating dozens of people to make it happen. It shouldn't be that hard. The tiny house lifestyle will never be for everyone, but since we started this project, it's become obvious to us that there's an urgent demand for this type of housing in Portland that isn't being met. We've received dozens of messages from friends asking us for advice on how to do it over the past few months. I urge you to adopt the residential infill project and the proposed community amendments for deeper affordability and anti-displacement. I've already benefited immensely from these recent measures to add density, and I want more people to have opportunities like I've have. We need more opportunities for people who don't mind sacrificing square footage for the amenities of Central Portland. And we need density now so that artists don't have to choose between creating and living in the city that we love. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And now the counterpoint to.
Hardly. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Corey Poole. So often I hear about the need to stop demolishing Portland, that we need to preserve neighborhood character. From my home in inner southeast Portland, I can tell you that much of the Portland that I love has already been demolished. The homes are still there, but many of the artists, baristas, performers, service workers, students, and minority groups are now forced to live on the outskirts of Portland or in another city altogether. Dense neighborhoods are green neighborhoods. It's much easier to make dense neighborhoods walk, bike, skate, scoot, and ADA friendly. It makes me sad to hear that so many of my neighbors are more concerned with free parking space in the street than having a new home for somebody. Rather than fighting to preserve parking, we should be fighting to free our city from car dependency, and RIP will help address this. As you're well aware, we're in a housing emergency. The RIP will go a long way to creating higher density, less expensive housing. This will help keep Portlanders in their neighborhoods, creating new opportunities and new home ownership possibilities. Finally, as a Portlander who recently finished a 2-year project on my own house, which involved my spending over 20 hours in the Portland Bureau of Development Services just to get a standard permit, I can say that a great deal could be done to streamline the permitting and inspection process. I would never attempt to do another building project on my own under the current system, and I'm sure that many others who could build a home for themselves or others are currently dissuaded from any such attempt. Please vote to support RIP now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good testimony. Thanks, all three of you. Next three, please.
Neil Heller, Diana Gutman, Al Ellis, followed by Floyd Jones, Machu Williams, and Keith Scholes.
How many do we have left, you know?
Keelan, where are we in the count? 25 left.
20 left.
Oh, so we're not gonna finish this.
Would you like to start, please?
Absolutely. Hi, Mayor, Commissioners. No.
She'll be back.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Neil Heller. I work with communities around the country to align policy with desired development outcomes. I do that as a job, but I'm here to talk about the infill project and my support for it because one-plex zoning in urban areas is low density, it's low choice, and it's low inclusion. And so this is not by accident, but it's designed and applied to be so intentionally. This is our opportunity now to undo an exclusionary, classist, and racist structure that's been in place for over 50 years. And so I encourage you to support the recommendations forwarded to you by the Planning and Sustainability Commission, including those of Portland Neighbors Welcome. And I like the recommendations of Portland Neighbors Welcome because they're influenced by a broad coalition of diverse groups. You've got tenant rights organizations, anti-displacement folks, affordable housing providers, a 50-plus older adult organization, youth climate champions, and tree canopy advocates influencing those recommendations. But overall, in the infill project, what's being proposed is nothing new in Portland. Some of our most treasured neighborhoods have a variety of house sizes, a variety of house styles, and a variety of household income levels. So this is a proposal to correct course toward an inclusive community with livable density. And what I mean by livable density, it's a livable density that supports our local businesses. It's a livable density that houses the employees who work there at these businesses. It's a livable density that supports transit ridership. It's also the variety of housing options that allow a family to live in a one-plex with a yard if they'd like to, but also allows for our aging mother in an ADU, our kid's teacher and graphic design partner in a fourplex, and young roommates who live together and build cool tall bikes. But so truly, neighborhood character really is nothing without the neighborhood characters themselves. And so I think the infill project, as proposed, goes a long way in creating the relative affordability for our working class folks, providing housing options as low as 90 to 100% of the area median income. But one item that I feel would help improve the infill project is the deeper affordability amendment that allows 6 and 8 plexes.
Okay.
This financial modeling on that has shown that that can stretch our public subsidy dollars further.
Thanks.
And I'll stop there.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate it. Thank you. Diana, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Diana Gutman. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm here today for this public testimony regarding affordable housing in Portland. We are in a housing crisis, and that word should be taken seriously, crisis. There are so many people here that are trying to stay in the city. We've heard from previous testimony, people who have to make tough decisions and are willing to downsize their life and find the joy in what they have and making it work. And I think that's a testament to all the things that the city of Portland offers everyone. Affordable housing is a human right. Everyone should be able to have shelter, and we as a city need to help the people who do not have shelter, who are trying to find a place to stay, and help them so that they can continue to stay in the city of Portland. I think that this promises a lot to the people who are here in Portland. And so I encourage you to vote aye on this matter. One of the things that I would say that we could possibly do to take it a step further is to not be afraid of the density at all, but actually even designate select units for transitional housing. Because even in earlier testimony today on this specific subject, we heard from people who are survivors of violence that were too afraid to leave their home. And this is something that we should be able to offer. We have so many community partners that are advocates for survivors of violence and abuse. And one of the biggest problems when trying to leave an abusive relationship is not having a place to go. And I think that to serve the city of Portland, we need to serve everyone with what their needs are and meet them exactly where they're at.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Al Ellis. I serve as board member and newsletter editor for the Beaumont-Wilshire Neighborhood Association. I'm also one of the founders of United Neighborhoods for Reform, UNR, which I represent on BDS's DRAC Demolition Subcommittee.
Thank you.
UNR formed several years ago as a grassroots reaction to what preservation organizations characterize as a demolition epidemic in Portland residential neighborhoods. Subsequently, over 40 neighborhood associations endorsed UNR's infill development resolution calling for conservation of viable homes from the bulldozer and mitigation of health hazards associated with demolitions. Commissioner Fish, whose family experienced fallout from a demolition next to their residence, was adamant in his voicing concerns on this issue. Just yesterday, the DRAC Demolition Subcommittee wrapped up its work on recommended improvements regarding BDS demolition inspector procedure, and those recommendations should be coming your way for consideration in the next few weeks. However, the proposed policy of building plexes in the so-called missing middle of residential neighborhoods is a recipe for increased demolitions of homes. Why? Because vacant lots are few and far between in these neighborhoods, and the only way to make room is via the bulldozer. UNR is not opposed to the building of plexes per se, but doing so by exacerbating an already critically short supply of entry-level homes via demolition is counterproductive. On behalf of UNR and thousands of concerned residents around the city, I urge the council to adopt an infill development policy that does not incentivize demolition of existing homes, which are in high demand by first-time buyers, many of whom are our grown-up children. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks, all three of you. Why don't we take a stop here?
Yeah.
And let's see where we are. Because we're potentially losing legal counsel, or potentially losing our quorum. Let's,
They're swapping out, but,
Yeah, they're gonna swap
but I
out.
will
They're
have
gonna
to
swap
leave
out.
momentarily. Yeah.
Okay,
And I
so-
just wanted to say a couple things.
okay, Commissioner Udaly, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have to head over to the Metro Transportation Measure Task Force meeting, which is not optional for me as a task force member, so I apologize for the interruption and that I'm not going to be able to hear the rest of the testimony.
Oh, I'm still here.
Oh, Commissioner France, of course.
Out of sight, out of
You
mind.
still there, Commissioner.
Okay, well, someone said we were losing quorum, and I thought that meant that you had dropped off the line, so great. The show will go on, I will leave. I just want to quickly thank everyone who came to testify today. I've been taking a bunch of notes and making note of a variety of community concerns. I want to share my concerns really quickly. And these have been my concerns for the last 3 years. Will RIP generate the number of new units we need in the city? Will RIP generate the types of units we need from the private market, which are units that are affordable to those earning 60 to 100% of MFI, as well as increase the development of accessible units? We can't compel the private market to build below 60% of MFI. That will come from public housing and affordable housing developers. Will RIP result in an increase in demolitions, which could lead to less affordable homes? Will RIP benefit low, moderate, and average income homeowners? And will RIP create reasonable, well-managed density? I want to be clear that I am largely supportive of this policy. I do not want to slow down the process. I think that I do support the deeper affordability bonus amendment, and I think that we can, with some meaningful commitments to developing these anti-displacement measures in a certain period of time, I would feel comfortable moving forward. And I just want to end by responding to some of the comments I heard about density. As someone said, density supports thriving business districts. We had a land use appeal from a neighborhood in Southwest Portland that wanted us to compel a developer to require a grocery store to move into a commercial property that had asked for some zoning change. Their neighborhood simply doesn't have the density to support a grocery store anymore. And preventing residential infill will ensure that they will never have the density to get a grocery store. Density drives the expansion of public transportation. So if we decide right now we are not going to bring RIP to areas that are outside of a certain distance from a frequent service bus line, again, we are guaranteeing that we will never see a frequent service bus line in that neighborhood that's not dense enough to justify an expansion. Density helps create walkable neighborhoods, and density is a requisite for sustainability that should lead to people being less reliant on cars. And while I certainly sympathize with the stresses around parking, we are nowhere near the worst in the nation for parking, as someone suggested earlier. And we are no longer living on a planet where we can afford to have 2 cars per household, and the vast majority of people living in our city depending on single occupant vehicles. This is one of many pieces of the puzzle to ensuring that we can move forward toward a sustainable future. So I will leave it at that, and I'm off to my thrilling transportation task force. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, is it your desire to continue taking testimony? Or
I
to
would
close
personally
out?
like to, unless, Commissioner Fritz, how are you doing?
I am in the, fine.
Okay, good. I'd like to go ahead and continue. People are here. There's no guarantee people can come back tomorrow. And if people need to leave and just want to come to the microphone, say their name, say I'm for it or I'm against it, and leave, that's also fine too. You don't have to talk for the whole time.
But not all.
Yeah, that's correct.
The next 3 names are Floyd Jones, Machu Williams, and Keith Scholes, followed by Charlotte Joshi, Prakash Joshi, and Margaret Davis.
My suspicion is we've already lost some people. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Looks like out of all these, I'm the only one left.
Well, I guess they thought you could speak
That's
for
okay,
them as
yeah.
well. There you go.
Okay. Hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a minute. I know I haven't been to EPAP in a while, but
Yeah, I know.
love you.
Well, yeah, I've been had my life kind of turned around a little bit about a year ago.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
All right. Good
Anyway,
afternoon.
I'm Keith, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioner left. Yeah. I'm Keith Schultz.
Commissioner Fritz on the phone, so.
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay. Forgot about that. Okay. Yeah.
They do, they're always forgetting me.
Yeah, you were one of the first people I met about 10 years ago with my volunteer work. But anyway,
remember that.
yeah. I'm Keith Schultz, and I'm a homeless right now senior and longtime advocate for housing and transportation. I'm here to testify in support of the residential infill project with the inclusion of needed anti-displacement measures. I know you guys, a lot of people have discussed that. Okay, simply increasing housing supply does not protect or provide more stability for renters in the face of displacement and unaffordability, basically, yeah, in their existing neighborhoods. 20 years ago, I was priced out of Portland and moved to Gresham after being a Portland resident for over 25 years. At the time, moving to Gresham was the only affordable option I had. But as of the last decade, I've been facing the same issues that led me to move out of Portland in the first place. What happens in one area of this affects everyone in the Portland metro region. It doesn't affect everyone immediately, but in the long run, it will. I am a renter. I have been a renter for all my life. And in order for the residential infill project to be effective at addressing the core issues that affect low-income people and renters, it must make sure that developers receive benefits to build regulated affordable units. It must also make sure that tenants have a right to stay in their neighborhoods and are able to rent or buy a unit in their redeveloped dwelling. I lived in Portland for 46 years, and for almost half of those years, I've suffered housing instability for this reason. I support the residential infill project with the proposed amendments proposed by the ADPDX Coalition.
Thank you. We appreciate your being here and appreciate your testimony. Thanks, Diane.
Next, we have Charlotte Joshi, Prakash Joshi, Margaret Davis, followed by Randy Sebastian, Richard Shepard, and Ashley Henry.
Great. Good afternoon. Do you want to go ahead and start for us?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present ourselves. I represent the Collinsview Neighborhood Association, and I'm the transportation chair for the association. I work with PBOT. I have for 18 years as its chair.
Thank you.
And I've worked very closely with PBOT, and some of my observations today will be based on my observations of the city and the PBOT and so forth. And I'll try not to be redundant. My testimony or the board's testimony has been turned in.
Good.
And that is what our point of view is. And several of our board members wanted to come today, and we decided not to use your time or the time, so I'm going to be very concise and do this as concisely as possible. Our issues are that one of the things I must say to you is that when the RIP project was unveiling and it came to, most of our members, if not all of them, said, "What took so long?" But there was also another underlying factor here that we tried to put this project in our neighborhood, try to figure out how it fits in, where it fits in, and we found disparities were immense. We also found that it seemed like the Bureau of Development did not consider some of the things maybe the way we read it. Maybe they did, but we weren't sure of that. And so today, I would like them to address some of the things that we'd like to talk about, is that our topography is different, our traffic is different, and it's not dependent on Portland. Our traffic comes from Lake Oswego. It's a flow-through traffic, and it comes very, very intense, and it's intensifying every day. Our traffic comes from the two major schools there, Law School and Lewis and Clark College. And then we have a third school there put in from Dunthorpe that is run in our neighborhood, and our kids can't go to school there, but the traffic from Dunthorpe comes in to that school. So we're really traffic challenged immensely. And there's cars all over the place. Now, how do we reduce cars? We can't in the present plan because we're up and down. And to walk to anywhere, you would need a car. And when you see bicyclists in our area, they're recreational bicyclists. They're not commuter bicyclists. So we have a challenge. And the challenge is that no matter what you do, we can't tame the hills. And so that's the big point. So we need some consideration that will give us an understanding of how this density will not increase cars in our area. It will. Just about everybody that moves in there has a car. And we can't afford any more cars there. We'd like to reduce that, and there's nothing in the plan that addresses that aspect.
Very good. And
Thank you very much for your...
Thank you. And if I could digress for 15 seconds, I just want to put a frame on this that I actually haven't heard today, which is, let's remember, this is not a plan that gets implemented tomorrow and then built out tomorrow.
Glad to hear
This
that.
is a vision for how the city is going to look for decades to come. And much of this won't come to fruition for a long, long time. And so there is time for the infrastructure and the transit system and other needs to catch up with the overlay that we're creating here in our zoning. And there's also plenty of time for some of the incentive structures that people have talked about. So it's easy to get hung up in what are we doing right here now today, but this is really a longer-term vision, and I just don't want people to lose sight of that.
We're totally with you.
Thank
on
you,
that.
sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Davis, and I'm a longtime volunteer neighborhood activist who's worked with UNR and 4 different neighborhood associations. Like many Portlanders, I've seen hundreds of mostly modest, affordable homes taken to the landfill and replaced with market rate units, wasting old growth materials and mature tree canopy in the process. Not to mention spreading hazardous materials such as lead and asbestos to the environment and anyone within 300 feet. With development, I encourage everyone here to use their eyes more than their ears. We shouldn't entertain the demolition blitz contemplated, even encouraged by RIP, without first fixing ineffective controls. Recent news stories and meetings with BDS officials have shown that as few as 20% of demolitions are supervised to control the release of hazmat, which can cause permanent brain damage in children. What about the thousands of households exposed in the other 80% of cases? I and other activists have warned you for years about this. And when this hazmat control measure came to council, you all welcomed it with open arms. But lip service isn't protecting people, and I would suggest that you put some teeth behind it. Then there's a demolition delay. That's pretty much the only tool that neighborhood activists have to slow demolitions of viable, affordable homes. That, too, has a laughable record. For instance, Roseway Neighborhood Association, I was the land use chair, filed an appeal for a modest home in our neighborhood that was slated for demolition. We spent hours doing the process, and we did it right, except we then found that city staff helped the tear-down developer, Renaissance Homes, do an end run around the regulations and neighbors. Now in place of that modest old growth home are unaffordable units. And I submitted the ombudsman's investigation to you. Lest I sound anti-development, I've been a developer. I built 2 units and I built them on vacant land. It can be done. So you'll hear a lot of the affordable housing term and the related housing crisis. And probably by the developer-backed groups such as Thousand Friends of Oregon, Portland for Everyone, maybe even Neighbors Wanted. And I just want to point out that there's big money under our bungalows, and we ought to fix the demolition stuff before we even contemplate RIP. Thank you.
Both and. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the list is Randy, Sebastian, Richard Shepard, and Ashley Henry, followed by Leslie Carlson, Ron Dobronic, and Allison Lucas.
Keep
Please come
reading.
forward.
Yeah, keep reading until we fill some
You
seats.
called your name, come forward, please.
So we have 2. Okay. Fine. Just make sure you introduce yourself when you do. Keep going until we get another person in the chair.
Nolan Leinhardt, Amy Wilson, Ben Schoenberger,
Yell bingo if your name gets called.
Linda Netikoven, Daisy Quinones.
We have 3. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Hi, my name is John Carter. Thank you for having me here today.
Thanks, John.
I think the thing about it is the exclusionary zoning of single family is something that was built in bad faith across the country for racist and classist reasons. We are stuck with the consequences today, but we don't have to remain stuck. And I think I support the zoning code changing. I only support residential infill project if it includes inherent affordability measures, but also I think it's a half measure in the sense if we want to create complete neighborhoods, we have to think about them in the complete sense, and that includes commercial affordability as well, and giving people the opportunity to own and operate businesses out of their homes or small structures. I don't know if you all have ever been to the Taylor Court Grocery. It's in Montevilla on Southeast 80th. It's a unique property. It's a little grocery store attached to a home. There used to be 800 places like that existed in Portland before exclusionary zoning took place. And I think in that sense, you had a place where people could walk, get a couple groceries, and didn't have to go to a big centralized supermarket. That makes a huge difference. I think we need to think about, right now, all the construction that is happening in Portland is built from materials that are inherently not affordable. I think we need to, in the mix, consider alternate material structures like yurts. For example, Oregon State Parks, they have yurts all over the coast. And, if those are perfectly habitable, they have shared resources like kitchens and showers and bathrooms, and it costs, I could build a good yurt for $10,000. And it's like, that is something, if I could put that in my backyard, that is something that can be inherently affordable from day one. So I think just like thinking about like, are the material costs that developers using affordable, or are we gonna have to keep subsidizing this stuff to make it affordable? I think is a question that we all just need to ask. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, Mayor Wheeler, Councilor Harnesty, and Commissioner Fritz. I'm Randy Sebastian, Renaissance Homes, and local guy, born on 92nd and Foster. I've been building homes in Portland since 1984. My first house was affordable. It was $34,000. It was on Holgate. The permit was $800. A permit now is $60,000. I got a permit in 1984 in one day. I went to the Portland building and I got my permit in one day. Now it's months. A permit for a condo is $35,000. So people talk about affordability. The most expensive part of a house, 3 times the amount of the most second expensive thing, which is lumber, is the permit. That is. I mean, I am a product of the system. I've been building homes for 35 years. I'm the #1 home builder in the city of Portland. I built more homes in the city of Portland than any builder in the history of the city, and I'll figure out how to build here still. I do like a lot of the conversation that's been going on. I'm excited about RIP. I think it'll be good for affordability. I do think that there is a flaw, and that is in the floor area ratio. The term McMansion's been around, and I agree. Anything over, in my opinion, as a builder, over 3,000 feet is a McMansion. Those are larger than what people typically need, and in the city they don't want them that big. But this is showing 2,500 feet, but it really, guys, isn't 2,500 feet, but it includes the garage. And anytime footages are mentioned, garages are excluded. So my big hope is that the 2,500 feet excludes the garage, so we can build a 4-bedroom home that families can stay in the city and not have to move to the burbs. And again, I appreciate everybody's work on this. I'm excited about it, but I really think the floor area ratio needs to bump up to allow that extra 4th bedroom.
Got it. Thank you.
Above grade.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your testimony, Randy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Wilson. I'm the chair of the King Neighborhood Association and secretary of the NECN. And I've rewritten my notes so many times back there that this is going to be a mess. So let me just see if I can kind of follow this.
No worries.
I don't want to repeat a lot of the really great things that have been said. But, as a progressive, I think we like to create policies with very good intentions. But we have this magical thinking that everything's going to work out like we hope, without accounting for how these intentions can be evaded when the hammer hits the nail. And hope is not a plan. Although, I hope, I believe, and what you have to do is you have to look at the fine print, but you also have to look at what the intentions are of these policies. And living in the King neighborhood right now, I can tell you that the reality on the ground for me is that when you rely, forgive me, on developers to be incentivized, the results are only bigger buildings. And in my area, they're being devoted to Airbnb instead of housing. And the smaller affordable homes being demolished and replaced with new buildings that even at 2,500 square feet are almost always double or more the cost. It doesn't result in better affordability. We hope, but what I see on the ground every time I see this, it is not the case. And so we do have just incredible displacement in the King neighborhood. Historical, people that are kind of allowed to live there or pushed in there in the beginning managed to hang on, managed to not get displaced somehow, and now we keep implementing policies that are going to only contribute to that. So I agree.
Policy move more people out in the Northeast.
It's a lot of the things that Andre Bowe was talking about. is that,
Andre is talking about is, I mean, that horse has already left the barn. I mean, if you think about, I'm curious as to, because the only areas I think that are going to be greatly impacted do not include clean neighborhood. When it was being impacted, we didn't do anything. So I'm just curious as to why you think this is going to have such a big impact.
because it already has. Anytime you allow the small homes that we all sort of desperately want and that are affordable, and when developers will come and outbid families because they know that they're going to split them up, but the results are never affordable. And so the renters in particular in our neighborhood are displaced. And then there's pressure, as he was saying, on the old time, that the people that could have built capital and built wealth, they can't pass it on to their kids. Oh, can I have a few more because of the question?
Because I was just trying to, cut to the chase about why this is going to have an impact on King, but go ahead.
Okay, well, it's what we're seeing. It's what we see every time. If we saw affordable houses, for a duplex, triplex, whatever, we'd be all for it, and we do not do it. And I don't see any guardrails put in place to make sure that that happens. And I know you've got 3 other areas that you're more interested in, but I'm telling you, we see it now too.
Not that we're not interested.
Oh, I'm sorry. And if I said that, then forgive me. I'm sorry. But yes, please. So I'd really, really argue, take the what we're talking about with displacement and gentrification. Please hear that. What Andre said was really important, and we feel it too. If you don't do that first, same thing's going to keep happening.
Can I also, and that's good testimony, and I appreciate it, but let me just, again, put this thought out there that we have to think longer term. If you take a small house, and that small house, let's say it's a $300,000 house. I realize that would be very affordable at any price point in the city of Portland. But you have a $300,000 house, and that $300,000 house is replaced by a duplex. And the duplex has 2 units that are $350,000 each. A lot of people would say, well, there you go. You've destroyed the affordability. But the reality is that $350,000 house, that $300,000 house could be demolished, and a larger house, as some have described as a McMansion, could be $700,000, and it could still hold the same number of people.
Now that
Whereas
I agree.
now we have 2
But they might
units.
both be rentals.
Indeed, that could be the case, Commissioner Fritz. But I'm just saying part of the problem here is we look at this at the instant it happens. We're not thinking longer term about what this means for infill and a diversity of housing options and a diversity of affordability options. And I would just encourage people, as we pull this apart and start looking at potential problems in it, let's also consider over the long term what it means in terms of diversity of options, affordability, and infill. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I would say just one more thing, because it was a part I didn't get to, I'm sorry. I love the parts about this that stop the McMansions. And I love the parts that also allow for more ADUs. So if you took that small house and you put 2 or 3 ADUs in the back, win-win for absolutely everybody. And again, as she was mentioning too, the homeowners can stay, the homeowners can benefit, accrue wealth, pass it to future generations at the same time that we're getting the density and lower opportunities. So I'm just mostly concerned that I don't see that. The developer comes in, they see a
That's
small
fair.
house.
That's fair, and as people have said, there's no perfection here. We're not going to find perfection.
could
We're
put
trying
it
to find
in.
a significant
You
step
could do
forward.
that.
Well, and we'll see. That's
If I
what
might
the
just give some
testimony is.
historical perspective, which is only
Sure.
5 years ago.
Please.
What we directed the staff to do was look at how do you take big old houses and subdivide them internally so that you are not creating new housing, so that you are not displacing people, so that you are allowing homeowners to stay in place and perhaps have 2 or 3 units within their big house. It wasn't supposed to be encouraging the tear down of single-family homes to build duplexes with no certainty that either side would be owner-occupied.
So can I take a moment and ask the developer? I'd love to put you right on the spot since you're
Sure.
here. I appreciate your testimony.
Certainly,
And
thank
let
you.
me tell you that when I was running for office, I heard that over and over and over again. The exorbitant cost for permitting in the city of Portland is pretty outrageous. And it was homeowners, builders, schools, no matter who I talked to. So I wish I could say I was surprised at what you said about permitting, but I'm not. I've become insulated to that. But as a developer, Could you tell me whether or not it's attractive to you as a developer? Just put your developer hat on.
Okay.
This is not like personal, right? I
Sure,
won't
sure.
hold you to this. Put your developer hat on and say, if I have this big house, 4-bedroom, I'm an empty nester, right? And I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have the best public transit, but it's gonna get there at some point, right? I come to you as a developer and say, I got this big, beautiful home, I'm an empty nester. How many families you think we could get in here? How do you help me divide this house up so that I can get other people in it? Is that something that would be worth your time, energy, and what would be the process that you would use to determine whether or not the cost benefit would be worthwhile?
It is possible. It is possible. Somebody would have to. There are some huge homes that have a lot of footage. I mean, we own the Grimm House, for example. I own that, and so there are large, big, old, grand homes. I mean, a lot of it's done in the Alphabet District now for office buildings and things like that. So it is possible, certainly. You just have to make sure that, a lot of times it works best in really great neighborhoods, obviously, because people will give up maybe on some footage or something to be where they want to be. But it is possible that, and a lot of the homes, the larger ones have high ceilings and they have some room, so we could. It's possible, certainly.
Not to mention culture. They have a culture about them, right? Because it's like when we built these homes back in the 20s and 30s, and they had built-in fireplaces and that kind of stuff, right? And I think what we are hearing from people is that's the kind of stuff they don't want to lose, right? When we just start tearing stuff down and rebuilding new stuff. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you being gracious and allowing me to just put you on a spot.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Appreciate it very
Appreciate
much.
all of you. Thank you.
Ben Schoenberger, Linda Netakoven, Daisy Quinones, Madeline Kovacs, Jessica Aravalo, Katie Larcell, Vivian Satterfield, Tim Van Warmer, John Carter, Brenna Hurwitz.
Let me try it this way. Who here would like to testify? Could you raise your hand, please?
Has it, right?
Who has not yet testified? Is there anybody here who would like to testify?
Oh, there's
Come on
one.
up. Come on up. Please introduce yourself. Come on up. Please introduce yourself. Anybody else? Last chance? No, you can't go again. You
No,
can't
were
go
great,
again.
though. Thank you.
Unless you want to give me workout tips or something. You're done. Thanks, Randy. All right.
I'll go first.
Please.
Akasha Lawrence Spence. I'm speaking today as a private citizen and as a member of Business for a Better Portland. I wasn't even going to speak after all because I feel like a lot of what I wanted to say has already been said. The fact that we have a comprehensive plan in the city, we have a climate action plan, we have things that we know, metrics that we want to meet, and densification helps us meet those metrics. Giving neighborhoods the ability to accommodate more people of different income types, of different ethnicities, of different backgrounds. I think that in Portland, we like to say that we're a very progressive city, right? And we like to have that be our national stamp. And if that is true, then we have to have our values, our actions match our values. And densifying is doing that work. It is allowing more and more people to live in close proximity to public transit, to well-funded public schools, to a vibrant business district. There's no reason that we should be preserving historic neighborhoods in the name of historicity. There's no reason that we should be saying, oh, because it's old and because it says something about our history means it's good. What that history denotes is a racist, segregationist, exclusionary history, and we don't want to promote that. We don't want to say that that's a part of our legacy that we want to maintain. We should be ashamed that we still maintain single-family districts that is inaccessible to the majority of Portlanders. Like Commissioner Hardesty has pointed out, we've seen thousands of Portlanders move to East County, where children can't walk to school because they don't have sidewalks, right? Where they don't have access to great food sources. They can't find the things that make living in a neighborhood. And that is an attack on community. And so if we are really to have our actions match our values, then we need to push forward because it will be too late.
Thank you. Glad you did testify.
Yes.
Good afternoon. You get the last word today. Look at that.
That's a lot of pressure.
But young people will lead us, yes.
Um,
And everybody's younger than us, so.
I was going to say, that's the whole room, isn't it?
Sad but true.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
My name's Sam Galvan. I am a student at Portland State pursuing an undergrad in urban planning related fields. I'm not an expert in these areas, but I am passionate about them, and I am using that passion to pursue expertise. And I am in favor of the residential infill project. A lot of my sentiments around it have been spoken to very eloquently by others in this room this afternoon. With regard to the history of our city and to the reputation that we have and that we seek to promote, a lot of people have spoken about the negative history here, the problematic, racist, divisive, exclusionary history here, and it's important to keep that in mind as we move forward. It is also important to keep in mind our successes and what we've done well. And Portland has this reputation as an environmentally progressive and sustainable city. And it's important that we don't just hang our hat on that and just coast. We need to continue to pursue that, to cultivate that, and promoting this kind of density, this kind of mix of income, of housing types, of uses, in order to pursue a more environmentally sustainable, socially sustainable, economically sustainable path moving forward, I think is essential in maintaining that reputation. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. And so that concludes our testimony. Before I continue this, I want to ask my colleagues if they have any closing comments. Commissioner Fritz, I'll start with you if you had anything else you wanted to add for the good of the order. Commissioner Fritz.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I think the time is late, and I'll just wait to hear the rest of the testimony. Thank you.
Fair enough. And thank you for joining us by phone. Commissioner Hardesty.
I just want to briefly, I just want to briefly thank folks who showed up today to testify. I want to reiterate that this is not an affordable housing conversation that we're having when we're talking about RIP. What we're really talking about is planning for housing at different income levels in every neighborhood. Your income should not determine your zip code, and today in the city of Portland, it absolutely does. And we cannot continue to build on racist policies that clearly were not created to give opportunity to everyone. We are planning for the future, so we're talking 20, 30 plus years out. People talk today about their kids and their grandkids that aren't born yet. Those are the people that we're making these changes for. So I want to be really clear, this is not an affordable housing measure. So if people want to talk about how do we increase the stock of affordable housing, let's talk about that, but let's not get it confused with RIP. The other thing that I, quite frankly, felt really good about today was that people came to this conversation from a lot of different venues, but I think what I hear consistently is people know we have a housing crisis, people know we have to do better, and we also know that we're not building any more land. So we've got to actually work with the land that we have. I look forward to tomorrow evening's a long process because we make good decisions when we do good processes that engage the public. I also want to remind people who think that we're rushing this through to the finish line. 5 years is not a rush, right? If we've been working on this project for a long time, and so let's just not pretend that all of a sudden we're rushing it through. This has been a very thoughtful process. I want to really appreciate the staff who, quite frankly, I just don't know how they get up every morning again working on this stuff because they've been working on it for a long time. And just want you to know how much I appreciate the heart and soul and the spirit that went into this. And I would be remiss if I did not encourage people to read the report that the Bureau of Sustainability, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability put together around housing policy discrimination in Portland. It is a must read. And please don't talk to me about protecting people of color if you don't know the racist history of Portland's housing past. So thank you all and look forward till tomorrow evening.
Great. I also just want to express my support for the residential infill program. I'm proud to bring this ordinance forward on behalf of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I appreciate everybody being here to testify and express their opinions and suggest ways that this ordinance could be strengthened. Today, we clearly heard the urgency to move forward, and I believe we also have to seriously consider what Commissioner Hardesty suggested about the consequences of inaction. I think that's a very important point. The longer we wait, the more this city remains exclusive. We also heard the urgency related to this issue because of climate change, something you've seen this council prioritize time and time again. I look forward to collaborating with my colleagues with the urgency, the sense of urgency at the forefront of our conversations. I also want to acknowledge that I stand on the shoulders of many, many people who have worked on this policy in some form or another, not only for 5 years, but even for a much, much longer period than that. Former mayors, former city commissioners, former staffers, former people in the community, and I feel very privileged to be the mayor at this particular point in history that I can help push this across the finish line. And I want to be crystal clear, I'm determined to do exactly that. So this agenda item is continued to tomorrow, January 16th at 5 p.m. here again in council chambers. Written testimony will be accepted until Friday, January 17th at 5 p.m. Thank you all for being here. We are adjourned.